Hey, what is up, ladies and gentlemen? Greetings, and salutations, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the seventh season of Timeless Gamer, where the games and gamers grow older while the gaming experiences will forever remain timeless. Your gaming podcast show brought to you by Pinoy Retro Gaming, and we are now live in Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. And for all of our archive videos of our previous episodes, you can still check those out by going to our YouTube channel, Timeless Gamer PRG. That's Timeless Gamer PRG. Make no mistake. And you can also still listen to us in Audible, Amazon Music, Spotify, iTunes, and other major streaming audio platforms out there. And previously, in Timeless Gamer, we went back in time to the 80s, particularly with the 80s toy. So it was a very fun episode, and not the usual English centric episode that we did, but those are just primarily for the Filipino audience out there. But you can still check that out if you are very much interested. If you found yourself um, relating to some of the toys that we mentioned over there. And speaking of going back in time, the Chrono Trigger episode, ladies and gentlemen. Well, in this very particular episode, I tell you folks, it was a long time coming because every once in a while here in the Timeless Gamer podcast, we would mention Chrono Trigger, and almost always one or two panelists who would joke about it depending on the topic that we are discussing. And for this episode, we're going to be led by Sir Dan Faulkner right down there. And let's get it on it with the introductions. Coming all the way from the UK, Sir Dan Faulkner.
Hello, everybody. Good to see you all again. Hopefully, this episode will enlighten you just to how overrated Chrono Trigger is by some people.
And if this is your first time watching us, this might be the last time as well, depending on how the episode goes. And the one beside him, Sir Viraj.
Hey, this should be a fun episode. Let's have a look at this game. Let's dissect it. Let's prod it. Let's see if it's, no pun intended. It's stood the test of time. The whole Chrono thing. But yeah, it's a prolific game that a lot of people love. But yeah, I mean, is it overrated? As Dan thinks, we'll look into it. So let's explore this. Let's explore this very controversial topic. Let's move on.
The enthusiasm is reverberating throughout Sir Viraj's statement right there. Before I forget, Sir Dan Faulkner and Sir Viraj Katwaja, the host of the Sega Mega Masters podcast show, and we are very much very fortunate to have them on this show in this particular episode talking about Chrono Trigger. If you haven't seen their show, guys, if you guys are all Sega enthusiasts out there, go please check out their channel on YouTube, Sega Mega Masters. And of course, all the way to the Atlantic, Sir Banyagang native, Sir Joel.
Yes. Hello. Welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are. Very happy that you guys are here, both in the live video version of the podcast and the audio version of the podcast. Very, very happy that you're tuning in. We will be discussing Chrono Trigger today, and I will be offering my perspective as somebody who just played it most recently and actually lived through the era that it was first released. So, excellent. Back to you, Joe.
All right, so we got the past, the present, and the future right here, guys. So we all got it covered. It's as far as the whole timeline is concerned. So Chrono Trigger.
Why Chrono Trigger? Why have we picked
Chrono Trigger? Chrono Trigger, guys. So the game first released in 1995 for the Super Nintendo. And after one drunk dinner date, it was a love child between the pioneers of Square and Enix during the crazy time of the 1990s. Up until a few years later, the two companies would look at each other's eyes and said, well, you know what? The fucking was that great. You might as well get married. Yeah. It was not saying that anyone who is down in nerdy, who knew those people involved in the production of Chrono Trigger, Sakaguchi Hironobu, Kato Masato, Uesu Nobuo, Toriyama Akira, to name a few. Yes, I said the Japanese names correctly. Okay, have at
Yes.
me. To those
Mhm.
of who are not familiar yet with the game, so the main crux of Chrono Trigger, using time travel as a plot device, and to tell the story about a young spiky boy, a spiky haired boy with a Japanese sword for some reason, who could have saved himself from a lot of trouble if he did not stay quiet the whole time. Oh, there are also a frog-like creature, a futuristic robot, a semi-naked prehistoric girl, and some big alien from outer space bent on world destruction. Throw into the mix. Typical JRPG shit. So,
Mhm.
since 28 years later, yeah, Chrono Trigger is still considered by the vast majority of gamers, old and even new, to be the best game in the Super Nintendo library, if not the best out of the 16-bit era. Of
Heck, I've
course,
even heard
no
some people actually claim that it's the very best game of all time.
of all time, right? Exaggerations. We all do it, guys. And of
Mhm.
course, that title, like any others, that's up for debate. So we have the panel of this podcast who would like to discuss their testimonials of their Chrono Trigger experiences. And
Mhm.
as well as we gathered some testimonials from some people, some gamers in a few Chrono Trigger Facebook groups to come up with a well-rounded and a fair assessment of the said game. So I will give it now to Sir Dan to head this now for the show. Sir Dan,
Thank you very
take it
much.
away.
Thank you very much, Sir Joe. So that's a great explanation of the basics of Chrono Trigger. Now, like you said, we're looking at this specifically because, I mean, as retro gamers, I think anyone in the retro gaming community will hear that claim a lot, that Chrono Trigger is the greatest RPG ever, the greatest game ever, which is a big bloody claim when
Oh,
you,
oh my
you,
gosh.
you
Okay.
think how many games there are out there. But it does get claimed. So yeah, we'll dissect it, as Viraj says. We'll break it all down. So I'm going to go around. Let's go around, everybody, and let's
Mhm.
get everybody's very basic opinion. We'll break all the individual bits down, but let's start with yourself, Sir Joel. What's your history with the game, and what is your general overall opinion of it, mate?
All right. Well, the thing about Chrono Trigger is that it came kind of late into the scene in the Philippines. It's more during the time that, well, like I said, the Super Nintendo was big in during the era, but it was a little hard to get various games for it, especially regarding JRPGs, because we were kind of following the Western model, and a lot of the Japanese RPGs back then were a little hard to come by. People were very much focused on the Final Fantasy uh, branch of JRPGs. The moment that people started playing Chrono Trigger, a lot of people had favorable opinions on it, and I really didn't get to play it as during the time that it was during its heyday. But I kind of got into it a little bit after its heyday, maybe about a couple of years after it. I got my hands on it, started playing through it, and I have to admit it was charming. It was very charming, right from the get go. It did have a certain appeal to it for me during the time, and it was very straightforward in its presentation. I guess that's the impression that I got from it. So I played it, enjoyed it a little bit, and although being from the era of the 90s going forward, having one game was basically the epitome of what you had for the year. A big spending, big costs, big expenses back then for video gamers were monumental. So if you got a game during that time, you played the heck out of it until you had the chance to get another one, because times were tough, money was tight. Everybody was saving for the next big expense, and Chrono Trigger was that big expense video game wise for a lot of video gamers in the Philippines back then. So they played it, I played it. A lot of people enjoyed it. A lot of people were screaming from the high heavens that, dude, you this is one of the better video games that you'll ever play. Give it a try. And of course, I got carried away by the hype, played it and everything. But sad to say, the initial charm did not hold over for very long, and I found myself kind of wandering to other video games of the era as well. So it was like after a certain amount of time, I didn't even remember where I kind of fell off, but there were a lot of other video games that were calling my attention back then. So I kind of set it aside for a day. Next time I set it aside for 2 days. Before I knew it, I was setting it aside for the whole week, and I'd completely forgotten the thread of it. And well, I moved on. I'll tell you about my most recent experience with it as we go. But yeah, that's basically my historical experience with Chrono Trigger back in the day. Back to you, Dan.
Excellent. Great to hear, mate. Nice one. Just before we move on to the chats, we've got, I'll say hello to the guys in the chats at the minute. We've got Eris Avin Dewar, we've got Sir JDM, and we've got Dave Scott. So hello, chaps. Good to see you all on board so far. JDM says it's a good game, honestly speaking, but I wouldn't consider it as the best RPG of all time. So we've got JDM's opinion. Sorry you couldn't be here today, mate, but you know, it's good to get your opinion on it. So let's go to Seviraj then. Let's get his history and his general brief opinion on this.
So earlier it was mentioned that this game was released in 1995 or March 11th, 1995, if we want to be precise about it, right? For you Americans, that might be the case, but for us in Europe, Chrono Trigger wasn't even released in 1995. We didn't even get it on PlayStation. We had to wait until the 2008 Nintendo DS release. So for us, officially, the official release of Chrono Trigger in the PAL region was 2008 for the Nintendo DS. How bad is that, right? So the question is, if it was so great, why didn't we get it in Europe? That's a fair point. I want to just put it out there. I think there's a number of reasons probably why we didn't get it in Super Nintendo in 95. I think maybe because for us, the 16-bit era was ending in 95, pretty much. And the PlayStation had taken off. Saturn was out. That next generation, everybody banked on. I think in America, Super Nintendo was kind of a big deal there. And perhaps in Japan as well. And the SNES sort of continued to be quite a popular system up until 96, 97 in these regions. But for us in Europe, okay, the Super Nintendo was still popular, but it wasn't that popular, beyond 95, I would say. And I think maybe RPGs as a genre only really took off during the PlayStation era. Maybe I'm speaking from a European standpoint of view, and I think maybe the Americans will agree with it. RPGs in the 16-bit era were still seen as a niche thing. I wasn't old enough to play that game. I was 10 years old when Chrono Trigger came out. I didn't even play RPGs until, I was in my early teens, shall we say. Final Fantasy VII era is when I really started to play RPG. So look, I think we didn't get it because one, RPGs weren't really popular as a genre in Europe, and maybe people say, "Oh, you're talking out your backside." Very, they were popular. They probably were popular, but they weren't going to sell in the millions. And would it be worth publishing a game that will not sell as much, shall we say? So that we didn't get. Now, my first experience with the game was via emulation, okay, because people went on about this game on the internet and talked about it. And a friend of mine on the forum goes, "You never played Chrono Trigger, bro? What's wrong with you? Give it a go." And he introduced me to two SNES RPGs. One was Terranigma, which is a European exclusive, funnily enough, which the Americans never got. But Chrono Trigger was the one that we never got. And I played it I think it was 1999, 2000 when I played the SNES ROM of it, because it was a look, let's be honest, it was a very popular game and people shouted about it. I thought, okay, let's give it a go. And I played it and I thought, okay, this has got some interesting visuals. I think this character looked like a Dragon Ball Z character from the artwork, and lo and behold, it was actually a Dragon Ball Z. The guy who created the Dragon Ball Z artwork did this as well. So hey, how right was I? So I played the game. I thought, okay, you got this guy called Chrono. He's a bit of a mute. He doesn't talk much. Okay, so we've got to go around his house, and then as soon as you step out his house and you're into the field, you listen to that music of the year 1000 AD. I think that's in the soundtrack. The soundtrack did grip me because I did like the soundtrack. I thought this has got some good sound. Okay, it's a nice orchestrated melody. It's the first time second time I heard something like this because Terranigma I played before. It's like, okay, it's a very beautiful soundtrack. And then we go for a walk to the Millennial Fair, and then we go there, and then you hear this lovely, jolly little music there. Oh, this is
Very addicting, that one.
It's in your head now. It's an earworm that visits me every year. But you go around, you talk around, and there's little mini games in this fair, and obviously you meet the girl Marley, whatever her name is, and you realize, okay, something's going on here. What's happened here? An event happens, and then the adventure begins. Yeah, lo and behold. So I played this game. It does draw you in. It did draw me in. I thought, okay, this is interesting. And the battle system was quite simplistic, I found. And I obviously when you meet all the other characters that join your little party, and then there's the whole time traveling aspect, and you go back and forth. And you have this lovely, and it's a lovely game. I enjoyed it thoroughly, to be honest. And I played it all the way through, all the way back then. However, there were parts of it I did sort of found a bit monotonous in how it played. And the only thing that sort of made me want to continue is to see how the story would end. It's like watching a movie. You're like, oh, okay, there's a scene here that I'll probably just stomach through because I just want to know how this ends. And that's how I sort of continued playing this game, to see where we go back and forth through time, go back to the Stone Age and see this girl called Ayla, this cave babe that you obviously have the hots for, Joe. But I continued playing it, and I beat it. I think it was in 2000, 2001. But I was never drawn that heavily to play. I mean, I have obviously we never had a physical release or an official release. I bought it on my Nintendo DS, not on release actually. I bought it pre-owned, and I still have that copy. And it's just one of those, and it's expensive here in the PAL region because that's the only official way we can play it. It's the official PAL release if you want to play this game. And the Nintendo DS obviously took on, there's 3 versions of this game. You got the Super Nintendo version, you have the PlayStation version, which is part of that whole compilation thing. And that's actually seen as, well, at the time was quite definitive because you had all these lovely cutscenes in it, which was nice. And it actually adds more dimensions to their characters, which is really good because I think that game kind of needed that. And that's also been ported to the DS version as well. And we've got some extra little bits in there. And also it's the battle mechanism has been amended. That's why I always say the DS version is the best way to play this game now. It actually makes it much more accessible. But even though I bought it on the DS, I never actually bothered completing on the DS because there were just so many other games that I'd rather play. And what does that tell me about my thoughts about the game now? It's a great game, and like many Nintendo games on the Super Nintendo era, they were fun and great to play through that one time.
Yes.
I'm not drawn to want to play it again for a secondary time. I'm not romantic. I'm a romantic man. I have to want to have that romantic feeling to want to play it again. But I didn't feel that romantic feeling with this game. It was a wonderful game to play once, yeah, but I just didn't want to play it again. And that's where I think there's something there. It's an X factor that doesn't resonate with me, but resonates in so many others. And people go on about Chrono Trigger. I wonder if these same people how many times have they played this game? I'm sure they must have done. But I'm trying to get into their mind as to why do they like this game? Why this game? I mean, in my opinion, it's a great RPG. It's probably in the top 5 SNES RPGs, in my top 5. I'd say that. It's not my top. But I wonder what it is about this game. So those of you listening to me in the comments section, tell me, what is it about this game that has that X factor? Is it that critical acclaim? Maybe it's because I'm a European and we never got it on release and I don't feel that sense of nostalgia for it. Maybe it's nostalgia. I don't have that nostalgia for this game because I only played it on ROM. I never had the official cartridge that I got to open from the packaging and smell and put it in my Super Nintendo. I never had that experience. So maybe it's nostalgia speaking. It is a lovely story. Okay, it is colorful. It has a wonderful soundtrack, and it plays fun. But there's nothing that really wants me to. There's nothing really that makes me want to bite into it and say I really like this game, because I know different people have different reasons for why they like RPGs. Some people, for me, it's partially it's the music, but for me, it's the story. It's always the story. An RPG is like a movie to me, and the movie has to be well written and it has to have a plot that I have to fall in love with. And I think where Chrono Trigger falls on its face is the main protagonist doesn't talk.
Well, wait.
Yes.
We're getting breaking it down. We're breaking it down. So let's come back to that. Let's
actually.
That's where it begins. That's where it begins.
Yeah.
What I will say is,
Here comes the angry letters.
and how what do we compare this game to? That's another thing. I mean, we can talk about
Wait,
it, and then
if people are claiming it's the best game ever, anything's comparable to it.
it's true. But
Yes,
I'll
that's true.
talk about it in the RPG genre format because it's not fair
Okay.
comparing an RPG to, like, say, a sports game like Madden. You know, it's ridiculous. But
Yeah.
if you're it's two different things. But if you talk about the RPG genre, 16-bit RPGs, because obviously 32-bit RPGs are very different. Final Fantasy VII is better than Chrono Trigger. Okay, because it's got a much superior story. I love the story of Final Fantasy VII. But we're talking about SNES RPGs and 16-bit. I'm going to compare it to other 16-bit RPGs because that's fair. I have to be fair. And no, it's not. It's a great game. It deserves. If people want to say it's a 9 out of 10 game, a 10 out of 10 game, I get it. But I don't think it's better than. There's so many other 16-bit RPGs. I think are better than Chrono Trigger. I definitely put in the top 5, top 10 maybe of that era, but I wouldn't say it's the best. And we'll get into the nitty gritty bit. I'm going to hand it back to Dan and let him pass on to it. But that's just that's just me touching the surface.
Yeah, exactly. That's flirting with it. When we get into the nitty gritty, I can't wait to hear that. To be honest, but
to go into the 80s, Viraj is kind of semi quoting from Top Gun. You've lost that love and feeling. Okay.
So what about you, Sir Joe? What's your history and general overall thoughts on this, Sir Joe?
So I'm trying to look at Chrono Trigger based on that. No pun intended. God damn it! Depending on our timeline when it first came out, 1995, back in Manila. All of you guys, Filipinos, watching us and listening to us, you know this. Us in Manila, we are 10 years behind the US. Anything that's going on in there, we're always whatever is the most popular thing going on there. We're almost 10 years behind. So 1995, SNES, we are still playing NES.
Very true.
We're still under the impression of Mario with Super Mario.
Yes.
Contra, Mega Man,
Battle
City,
City,
Excitement, Road Fighter, yada yada yada, Karateka, Legend of Kage, stuff like that. The 9999999 in one. We all lived that, right?
Yes.
So if you're one of those households who are able to afford a Super Nintendo, chances are you are what you have is a Super Famicom, Japanese model, and you having a Super Famicom, then that means that you're if ever you are interested with Chrono Trigger, that will come to you in Japanese. Chances are you're not going to enjoy that because you can't even read jack shit. You can't read that moonspeak.
Very true.
Right. So for us back in Manila, games like Final Fantasy, we all ignored that. We have the Famicom. We have the Famicom. We got the Super Famicom. We don't have the US NES or the Super Nintendo, which all of those Japanese RPGs that were localized. We don't have. We really didn't have all of those unless someone from the US will give those consoles to you as a gift as a child. You're more than a privileged household if you're one of those, right? So as back then, we only have these Japanese games, RPGs being so foreign to us at this time period. Some of us will be curious enough to play some of the role playing games, despite the Japanese language. We'll just go wherever, go whatever, despite the fact that we don't even know where we're going. We don't know what we're supposed to do. But some of us were able to play through it, trudge through it. I'm not even sure if anybody has finished it. Those JRPGs like your Dragon Warrior, Final Fantasy, and even in this case, Chrono Trigger. So Chrono Trigger was one of those RPG games, rather, that flew right out of my radar. Not until the mid 2000s when there's a working emulator for the Super Nintendo, I was able to play Chrono Trigger for the first time on our PC. I played through it, right, and I stopped right until I got Frog, and then I got bored. For some reason, I got bored only because there was another game that I was more interested to that just got released. I played that and another and another and another. I completely forgotten about Chrono Trigger. Granted, I hear people saying, "Oh, you didn't play Chrono Trigger when it first released. That means you don't really fully appreciated the game."
Mm.
All right, no. Around this time, around what the PlayStation One hit. Uh, I fell in love with the genre because of the PlayStation One, and the PlayStation One is not really that far apart with some of the 2D. Well, the 2D graphics of the PlayStation One is not really that far apart from the SNES. Yeah. So I mean, there are some games for 2D JRPGs from the PlayStation One who could have that we could have just put it on the SNES and we won't even tell the difference. My point is, I'm already in love with the genre. Um, if Chrono Trigger was released for the PlayStation One, which eventually it did with Final Fantasy and Chronicles.
In
But
America only, though. We
yes,
never got it in Europe.
oh, see. So let's just say if Chrono Trigger was first released on the PlayStation One, I would have played it. Maybe fell in love with it for the first time, but sadly no. I only played Chrono Trigger up until recently, this July, just to prepare for this episode. And is it fair to if I'm going to hold it up against the other JRPGs that I played, I enjoyed some other titles more compared to Chrono Trigger, but is it a bad game? No. To all of you Chrono Trigger fans out there, it's not a bad game. All right.
I think all of us agree it's not a bad
It's
game.
not a bad game. Okay. Put down the pitchforks. Put down the torches. Not, it's not a bad game. I'm just saying, on a personal level, I I'm just like Sir Viraj. I'm more into the story this time, and I'm not looking at Chrono Trigger to some of you guys with rose-colored glasses, right?
Mm.
I don't want to hear people saying, "Oh, because you didn't play it back in '95, then you don't have the same you don't feel the same objective uh, criticizing this game like we
Or
did."
or
No,
you
no,
didn't
no,
get all 250 endings or whatever,
all
you
the,
know.
you didn't get all 99 endings and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, your opinion's invalid. No,
Mhm.
no, no. Eventually, uh, um, as we go along with the show, we'll try to um, we'll try to raise our points.
Mhm.
Granted, I mean it's not just our opinions that we're going to talk about here. We're also going to feature some testimonials as well from
Yes.
those fans of Chrono Trigger who really did made an impact to them on the personal level as gamers and as individuals as well. So it's not just us. Ja- Let me get this straight. This is not an inquisition.
Oh, it isn't?
This,
I thought that was what I was signing up for. Okay.
this is not, we're not trashing the game
Okay.
yet,
Yeah.
but but let's see how we go, right? And if any of you guys have your own testimonials or any comments about Chrono Trigger and how it impacted you, just jot it down in the comments.
Hmm.
I don't know. Swear, cuss us, cuss us out. We appreciate your feedback as long as um, make your case down in the chat. We'll read it out loud. Back to you, Sir Dan.
Absolutely. And
Excellent.
we take all comers. Make sure that you guys put in your opinions in the chats, both in the live version, and if you guys have strong opinions even later on in the when you listen to the podcast after this broadcast, put it in, join us in our chats in Pinoy Retro Gaming Facebook page. We'll definitely indulge your little opinions and delusions. Anyway, continue. Back to you, Dad.
Yeah, excellent. And it would be great to hear from people who were besotted with this game. Regards my history of the game, as Viraj has already said, we didn't get it in Europe. The first time I played it was actually on my UFO Super Nintendo copier machine. And that was around 1996. So this was a little device. I've still got it at my dad's, actually. A little device that operated on floppy disks, and it could rip off. It basically ripped off all Super Nintendo games. And at that point, it was ridiculous, the price of Super Nintendo games. When Donkey Kong and Killer Instinct and that had come out, they shot up. They were like about 30-40%. Oh, hey, Joe's got one. There we go. That's the bad boy. Yeah, but back around that time, Super Nintendo games were about 30% more expensive than like Sega Mega Drive and PC Engine games and all that around then. So I just got this copier. I thought, right, let's delve into the library. And I say 96, year after the release, and I really enjoyed it. First time I played it as a kid, I really enjoyed it. But same as you guys, I kind of really enjoyed it to the level that I thought it was a good game. I didn't think it was a great game. I would have never even considered it a best game of all time. I guess the big thing for me was it actually felt dated. That was the big thing that stuck with me, is that playing Chrono Trigger several years after Phantasy Star 4, it felt like a dated game because it didn't have the comic book style cutscenes, which kind of to me took RPG gaming to another level, and it didn't have the talk feature, which was essentially a journal, and so those two elements really stood out to me. And when I played Chrono Trigger, I enjoyed it, but watching the story evolve from the old school point of view, where sprites just walk around and the text box, as opposed to watching it unravel on screen with those excellent manga style comic book scenes. I kind of played Chrono Trigger, but I come away thinking, yeah, it's a nice kids game. It's a nice kids game, but it's not a proper RPG, is it really? But with all this hype about it, reading on the internet how amazing it was, how fantastic it was, I've gone back and played it several times. I've actually gone back and played it twice since. And I'll be brutally honest, both times I really didn't enjoy it. I enjoyed the first 8 hours of the first playthrough. But after that, I found it a real drag. And the second replay, I was like, oh man, why am I forcing myself through this again? But I wanted to just to make sure I'd got everything down. So it to me, it's definitely not a best game of all time for me. I've got it ranked. I think it's a top 10 Super Nintendo RPG, definitely. And I think it's a good game everyone should play. But I've played through the past 6-7 years. I've played through 600 16-bit games thoroughly, and it doesn't even get in the top 100 of those. So, no, I don't know. No, it's 131. It's official ranking with me. It's 131.
131.
That's still good. It's still good. It's an 8 out of 10 game. So, you know what I mean?
You're saying there's 130 better games for the 16-bit era that are better than Chrono Trigger.
Definitely.
Right, what about RPGs then? Forget all these other games, yeah? Where does this rank in your RPG 16-bit playthroughs? And what I want to know is what you've ranked higher than Chrono Trigger. Let's
just RPGs.
Yeah.
Just RPGs. Let me just get my list up. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, Dan actually has a spreadsheet on that, and he can data sort and filter it.
There you go. Spreadsheet, right. So just RPGs, it still ranks quite highly with RPGs. It ranks 15th.
15.
Okay, so that's not too bad.
Well, question: what is the game
RPG.
immediately above? What is the game immediately above Chrono Trigger on your list?
Yeah.
1 second. The game immediately above. I'm flitting through between several spreadsheets here. Give me a second.
Yeah.
Right. The game immediately above it is Illusion of Gaia.
Ah,
Oh,
there you go.
okay.
Mhm.
That's
Okay.
fair.
Valid.
Oh, yeah, I can see that. I can see
Valid.
that.
Valid.
So-
I would say yes.
What's above Illusion of Time? Sorry, so
Illusion
it's
of Gaia.
Illusion of Time for us in Europe. Okay, I'm gonna call it Illusion of Time.
Oh, okay.
Above that, Buck Rogers Countdown to Doomsday.
Oh, nice one.
I haven't heard of that.
Agreed.
That's a Mega Drive
Right.
game.
Yes.
Yeah, you
Mhm.
said 16-bit,
Yes.
not
Mhm.
Super
Ah.
Nintendo.
It's
I
it
love
was
that
a port
one.
from the gold box
Love that.
era of DOS games. Mhm.
I don't understand that, but go on. Above that, I think that Buck Rogers game is primitive and belongs in the Stone Age. Go on, above that.
It's because you didn't play the DOS games, Viraj. You were never into the
For
DOS era.
Buck Rogers is it's space exploration. It's exploratory element is
Right.
is a different class.
Yes.
Okay, let's go above the Buck Rogers then, because I can't comment too much on it. All I know is
Okay. Yeah.
it had a really crappy GUI when I turned it on.
Its graphics are terrible, Buck Rogers, but it's
Oh, but the gameplay is stellar. I mean,
exactly. So what? You want me to just go through them?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I do.
above Buck
He's
Rogers,
curious.
Shining Force, the original
Shining
one.
Force.
Okay.
okay.
You
Well,
can see that. You can
yes.
see that.
Okay.
Above now, he's not going to argue with me with this one because this is a definite one, and I'm going to replay this, and I'll probably rank it higher when I replay it. Starflight.
Oh, yeah.
yeah, but I don't really grade that as an RPG. I see it as a simulation game. But all right, go on. What's above?
No,
Starfield?
So Starflight is it's essentially Starfield, Mass Effect.
Yeah,
In bit.
it's a bit. Yeah.
Now
essentially.
that's a perfect example to me when people say Chrono
Is that
Trigger.
the one with the spaceship that looks like a dildo?
Yes.
They've all got
Yes.
several of them, Sir Joe. There's several of them.
Mate, no, it's a spaceship that looks like your dildo. All
Oh
right?
my God.
Oh, there you go. That's
But
a
that's-
moving forward-
Starflight's perfect example to me of when people talk about Chrono Trigger as the best RPG, not of all time, but of that era. It can't match Star. How can you? The people are like, wow, the time travel aspect. Wow, you go to all these time zones. I've gone to 50,000 planets or whatever it is, and I've literally spent a year going to all these planets and that.
But I mean, Starflight has a different gameplay mechanic, which involves
Yeah,
mining.
but it's still an
to make
RPG.
money.
It's still
I
an
don't-
RPG.
I'd say simulation game. What else? Go on. I'm going to throw that out of the box. It's not fair to compare.
So
something.
Final Fantasy IV. I prefer Final Fantasy IV to Chrono Trigger. I think it's.
Serious?
Yeah,
Are you
I think it's.
serious with that?
I think it's a better structured game, better paced, better structured.
Alright.
Lufia 2.
Oh,
2.
Lufia.
Okay.
You gotta give it to the Lufia series. Yeah.
The game, the dungeon exploring, the gameplay in that is different class.
Yeah, gotta give it to the Lufia series.
Yeah,
Oh, it's
War
okay.
Song. I love War Song.
Langrisser.
I love
Okay.
Langrisser, yeah. Mhm.
Landstalker. Landstalker's a different class in every is just
Landstalker,
a
Sega,
different
okay.
class, me.
You think Landstalker is better than Chrono Trigger?
Oh God, yeah, man. Yeah. the dialogue in Landstalker is so.
All right, yeah.
so
You know what? In terms of the story, yeah, I agree.
Yes.
It's so much better. It's so you got all the look at all the puzzles you have to work your way through all
It
the.
had a whimsical soundtrack, but soundtrack, like, in terms of soundtrack, Chrono Trigger had a better soundtrack.
Yeah, no doubt.
Beyond Landstalker, I want to see what else there is. I can probably try and poke a hole in. Let's go.
Final Fantasy V. I think Final Fantasy V is the best Final Fantasy of the era because the job system is the job
Right.
system. It makes it's the only SNES RPG I can replay and try all these different job combinations out and enjoy. So it's great.
You don't find that it dragged a bit with the job combination.
Story's average, but
Okay.
it's enough to prop up the rest of the game. And
Right.
I think the exploration, the sense of discovery, and the job system make it way better than Chrono Trigger. We'll get into why Chrono Trigger in a minute, but
Above that, what do you say above that? 4.
Luna,
5.
the original Luna game, man.
Which one?
Luna 1.
From
because
the CD?
the writing in that is the best written game of that era. The writing in
Silver
that is
Star.
off the scale.
Silver Star.
Silver Star. Yeah.
Silver Star.
Silver
Sega
Star.
CD. Yeah.
The writing in
prefer-
Silver.
You prefer Silver Star over Eternal Blue?
I've not played Eternal Blue yet. I'm saving that for last. So I'm not done that yet.
Above Silver Star.
We're getting to the top two now, which is Shining Force 2.
Shining Force
Okay.
2.
And
Okay.
With that.
The big thing with Shining Force 2 is its replayability again. Multiple difficulty levels, 4 difficulty levels, and a squad you can experiment with. You can play it like endless times over that. So and top one for me is Phantasy Star 4.
Yeah, I know about that. I'm just wondering, but you haven't mentioned Final Fantasy 6. You haven't talked about
still playing it. I don't think it's that good. I think the last part of the game is fantastic. I think the last part of the game is top tier. I think it suffers from the same thing as Chrono Trigger, which we'll get to shortly, and that is the gameplay is stupid easy, and it takes it took me 20. I've logged it because I'm doing it for this. It took me 25 hours to get to a fight where I have to stop and think.
You go. That's very, very true.
After 25 hours.
Please.
Yeah.
What about Soul Blaze? What about Soul Blaze?
Shit.
Soul Blazer.
Shit.
Okay.
Soul Blazer.
Trash. Wank.
What about Terra Enigma?
Terra Enigma. Need to replay it, to be honest. I didn't rate it that much, but it deserves a replay. I'll tell you what the problem with Terra Enigma were for me is that it felt like Illusion of Gaia done badly. The dungeons just weren't as interesting. But
Illusion of Time is your favorite at that quintet. That's
easy. It's just got best dungeons. Just got the best dungeons. It's a dungeon. It's at the end of the day, it's about that game's about the dungeons and about the puzzles in them. And Illusion of Gaia does them the best.
What about Mario RPG and Earth?
Shit.
And the funniest thing is,
Super Mario RPG is coming for the Nintendo Switch this November.
Yeah, there you go.
The remake.
You can pay $60 to play shit again if you really want to.
They might have added some actions to that game that might be more interesting. I find it average. Entry level.
I find it average. I think it's a beginner's game, and I'm not a beginner. So
all right, we have an opinion here on the chats. We'd like to say hi to Sherwin Lyle El Katimbang, who says, honestly, they need to remake Chrono Trigger. Come on, guys, and put it in PS5 and orchestral theme music. If they're going to do that, I'm ready to die. Well, that's certainly an opinion, right there.
So let's move up. So let's break this game down. That's a great place for us to start. So let's start by breaking the game down, and let's start with the aesthetics.
Okay.
And I'll start there, backing you guys up. Let's start with that music, because the music, I totally agree. Some of the music in that game is superb, top level stuff, and I completely agree that if they ever remade it, it would be great to hear it orchestrally. So, what about you, chaps?
Well, what you just said, just to go on that, what prompted me to get the DS version is I used to go to this shop in Walthamstow. It's closed down. It's a place in London. It's called Awesome Games, and they had the soundtrack. Mr. Bell he's in the house.
Yes, Bell Valenzuela, who says, good evening, podcast team and Chad. There you go. The fearless leader of Pinoy Retro Gaming. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, he had the soundtrack. There's a promotional soundtrack, and you get it with the DS game. So he gave me the soundtrack anyway, because I used to buy stuff all the time. Like Chrono Trigger, I looked at it, I thought, no. And I walked out the shop and with the soundtrack. And I put the soundtrack in my player at home, and I listened to it. This is such a beautiful soundtrack. And it's a soundtrack which gave me the allure to want to buy the DS game pre-owned. And it was the sound that's what was the factor for me. It was probably the best thing about this game, in my opinion, is the sound. But that's the one thing that stands out for me. It's just there's so many memorable melodies in there. 1000 AD, the Millennial Fair, Robo's theme, the Corridor of Time. There's just so many, and that's just off the top of my head. There's some others which I don't even know the names of, but then there've been remix albums on ocremix.org. There's loads of tribute albums that they put on YouTube. Lots of these sound enthusiasts who like 16-bit music and the SNES RPG game music. There's so many rearrangements of the music of this game, which is beautiful because it's so timeless, and I think it's beautiful. So for me, yes, the sound I think might be why people are nostalgic over it. When they hear the music, I think that's what resonates in them, that the love for this game is the sound that draws them back. The gameplay and the story arc is definitely much more anemic than some of the games that Sedan just mentioned right now. And it's because we, as I mentioned earlier, about the protagonist not actually having one word to say about this whole thing. It's like you're playing, and I guess he's just there because you're the hero. You're playing through his eyes, but if you're not interacting with the characters are like sort of there amongst themselves, sort of thing.
Thank
Like,
you.
Stay on the music. Stay on the aesthetic. Let's
Oh yeah.
okay, so
the aesthetics first.
Okay, so you got the music there. You have its distinctive art style, which is like in my opinion, I thought when I first played this game, it's like a rip off of Dragon Ball Z, man. What's all these anime characters? There's nothing unique about it. I've seen this before on Dragon Ball Z and all the anime shows that were going out of that era, and it was actually the same artist. And I think those who like Dragon Ball Z and like that art style, and there was a lot of Dragon Ball Z. There were about 8 Dragon Ball Z games released on the Super Nintendo. For those of you wondering, the Super Famicom. It was big. Sailor Moon and Dragon Ball Z were the biggest animes of that era, and that art style was distinct. And I think when people see that art style, they resonate with some of the animes and that time of the era. So, in my opinion, I think what does draw these people back, and that's just from me being a European, not having any nostalgia for this game, or whatever, and looking at things, what make me feel nostalgic over it, is it has that art style that is of the 90s. It has that music that's wholesome and it makes you feel warm. It has music that makes you feel warm when you want to play this game. And I can imagine if you played this game in '95 when it came out and you didn't have much experience playing other RPGs, it's quite a simple RPG to get into. Yeah, it's very easy to get into, and I think it's like Mystic Quest in that regard. Obviously, it's a step up from Mystic Quest. It's an easy game for a lot of young people to get into, and you fall in love with the story and the characters. But for me, it's like, okay, I watched it, but it's like a movie on my DVD collection I'll never watch again. That's the way it is, because it's like there's nothing drawing me back to it. Yes, okay, it had other endings if you want to play it just to get the other endings and do things and tweak it around a bit, but it just wasn't. I think that's the way the game ended, and that's it, you know. But I don't know. I think it just had that feel that locked it to a certain era. And if you love, like many games, like many things, if you have a love for 1990s, 80s, that sort of feel of things, and you played this game, you're going to feel strongly about it. But I think a lot of people, when they look at old video games, they just get the blinkers on and think nostalgia, and they don't judge it critically as a game. They think of there are a lot of romanticism. They feel that it's their first love. It's their first love. She cannot.
Perfect description, mate. Perfect description.
There's nothing wrong with her. You know, I loved her. There's nothing wrong with her. Of course, there's something wrong with her because you moved on and played other games. But
yeah, she's fat. She's fat. She's had 5 kids now.
No, well,
there you go.
I don't want to trigger some people by.
But this is Chrono Trigger. That's why we're triggering people. Okay.
But it's just the memory of that first love for these people. It's that memory of that game they could sort of resonate with. And I remember reading in Computer Video Game Magazine. This is like an article in 2005, an issue in 2005, and they rated that the 25 best game of all time. And that's a British magazine. I'm thinking, we've not even had a bloody PAL release of this thing. Yeah. And you guys are rating it 25? What is this? What is this thing about this game? And it baffled me. And I played this game again. I tried to get into it again, but I've already beaten this game. What the fudge? And you know how when, you know, what Sir Joe said about when I got to Froggy, I got bored. Okay? I get that completely, because you're like, okay, you get to the castle, you go into that, you have that little adventure in the castle, you go into the woods, you get the castle after Community Fair, you go into there, you meet Froggy, you then go on your little quest down there, and then obviously you're like, okay, so where are we going now? And then you're like, okay, so let's continue on this journey. And you're like, there's this large patch of just, I don't want to use the word grinding, but you're going through battles and stuff, but there's no events happening before you get to that bit where you go back in time and you meet Robo and all that stuff happens. And you're like, okay, this is getting slow now. This is getting slow. There's no beats in this game after that point. It was good up to that point, and then okay, you go back in time from that, and you meet the Ayla, the little what's this about Mr. Bell saying?
Yes, both Akira Toriyama's are DBZ.
Right.
Yes, Dragon Ball Z and Chrono Trigger and Dragon Quest. Yes, all those designs by Mr. Akira Toriyama. That's true.
So going back to the game, like when you meet Ayla, the cave girl, you go back in 1000 BC or wherever it is she's at, 5000 BC I think it was, and you go back to that time and you follow, you're going into that story arc, and then you go back, and then you know what happened. Obviously, you obviously got the bad guy Magus or whatever his name is, I forget. And he's done these atrocious things, and you know you have to.
Well, let's concentrate on those aesthetics first and come back to
Okay,
the
so
Okay.
the art
He's
design.
running through it. He's going. Yeah, I'm going to tell you everything. I'm going to tell you everything.
Okay,
He has a lot to say,
the art.
not other than
We talk
music.
about the music is great, but then we look at the battle system. And we talk about
We're going into that next. We're going into that
Okay,
next.
next.
One step at a time, mate.
You've got the sprite. I think that the sprite animation is pretty solid for 95. I think that the art is common. It's not unique, to the game. I think it's special, but it's not unique. But if you've sort of seen it for the first time, like I said, yeah, you're gonna like it. If it's something you have, if you've got experience with RPGs and media of that era, you think, okay. But in terms of the animation, yeah, it's good. In terms of the drawing of the map, it's good. All that stuff, it's good. Maybe a little bit too tinny these days now by today's standards, but then it was pretty cool. But that's my thoughts on the art. It's good, but it's not original.
Nice.
Okay.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. What about you, Sir Joel? So, your opinion on the aesthetics of the game, mate?
The aesthetics. I completely agree. The music is quite an experience. It's got the melodies are very different. The melodies are very varied. There's a certain thematic approach to the different eras, the different environments, to the different situations. One of the early parts of the game had a foreshadowing of the Ayla era by having the caveman music playing when Chrono and Marley went into the Millennial Fair, and they had a little dance off with the people playing the caveman music. So it's a nice little mix of various tunes, and props to, I think, Nobuo Uematsu, who actually composed the soundtrack. Props to him. I have to admit that the catchiness of the tunes and the music, and well, the sound design overall, even the sound from the various different sound effects on the game, are to be complimented. I have to admit, they is very good, and you could tell that they put in the work for the music and the sound design. So I can't fault it. I cannot say anything bad about it. Aesthetically speaking, like Viraj did say, let me tell the story. When I was replaying through the game again in current era, the missus looked over my shoulder. I played the Android version, by the way, the Android version of Chrono Trigger. She looked over my shoulder and she said, when she first saw Chrono, she said, "That's Goku, isn't it?" It just says, uh, Akira Toriyama only has one style when it comes to the males. He just swaps out the hair, he just swaps out the color, he swaps out the eyebrows or whatever, and it's the same guy over and over again. So in terms of aesthetics, in terms of individual variety, you you cannot mistake it for anything else but an Akira Toriyama designed artwork game. Now, the color palette of the game, I'll say, is just as varied as the music. The differences between the eras are just as varied as the music, and I also have to compliment the art designer regarding that. So, art wise, aesthetic wise, music wise, visually speaking, I will agree that this game is well designed in terms of presentation. Presentation is key to getting somebody's attention to a game first. Now, regarding gameplay, we'll talk about that as we go. So that is my opinion on it, Dan. But first things first,
Fantastic.
we'd like to say hi to Derek. Derek of Retro Gaming Times coming up to the panel.
What's up,
Derek,
what's
hello.
Hey,
There
Derek.
you. Excellent, excellent. Mhm.
What's up? Derek Kabalabas Gaming Retro Gaming Times. And from the
Yes,
TRG na
Derek.
rin.
In a
And
while since the last time
Chrono
Sir Derek
Trigger.
was here.
Chrono
Chrono
Trigger,
Trigger.
the best
Now-
RPG of all time.
Oh,
There you go.
Go.
Now we have now we have a fight.
Well, now
Okay.
we have someone who's got an opinion that'll be interesting to listen to, because I want to know why he thinks that. I wanna
Actually, yeah,
know where
Derek.
this comes
We
from.
first
Let's
things first, though, Derek. Yeah, we have gotten into the portion of the podcast where we're discussing the music and the aesthetics of the
Music,
game.
okay.
Yes. Now we'd like to hear your opinion on if Dan doesn't mind.
Yeah, go
for it.
I'm asking Derek.
How,
what
how
do
it
you
music
looks,
for the
how it
music?
sounds to you.
Mm,
Okay, what I like about the music for Chrono Trigger is
mhm.
every character has their own
Theme.
theme. Like if you
Fair.
hear A-list theme,
Mhm.
so it depends on their character. So
Okay.
Ayla's character. Just a brief about Ayla, the
Mhm.
character. He's very energetic.
Mm.
She's she's a she. Is very like that, very strong
Oh,
or
Ayla's
energetic or
definitely a
very
she.
so
Yeah.
every character has their own theme and it fits really well.
Mhm.
That's what I like about
Sweet.
the
Mhm.
music.
Okay.
Nice
Mhm.
one.
There you
Nice
go.
one, mate. Nice one. So, what about you then, Sir Joe? What's your thoughts on the aesthetics, mate?
Okay.
Aesthetics.
Actually, yeah. Let's have.
The sprites,
Mhm.
the what you
Oh, the sprite. Yeah, of course. Yeah, the graphics as well, mate. Yeah, sorry.
Yes.
do we have to compare or
Well,
okay?
if you
Is it
have, yeah,
okay?
sure. Yeah,
Is it
sure.
okay?
Mm.
If you are to compare the sprites or the art assets
Mhm.
from the RPGs that released from that year and
Mhm.
before it, it
Mhm.
is the best looking. Um, if you look closely, if you look closely, their limbs are not
Very
how
Defined.
do
animated,
I not chibi
articulated.
type. They have
Oh, okay.
like their limbs are very
Proportionate.
their length or proportion.
Proportionate.
Yes. That's what
Proportionate.
I like to mean.
Proportionate.
Mhm.
And that's in that time that's very how do you call that,
Unique.
unique,
Yeah, very, very unique.
because it really shows their how do you call that, it really
Mm.
shows their
Meticulous designing.
no the ano ba yan, ugali, paano mo ugali?
Oh, their attitude.
Their attitude, yes, as each and it really shows their attitude. Then
Personalities, yeah.
it really shows. And um also if you it really emphasize like
Mm.
if you and also you'll really see how the how they how do you call it?
Go ahead, Derek. If you have
Okay,
trouble
okay.
translating something, I'll translate it in real time. Don't worry about it. Go
Okay,
ahead.
okay. Like for example, if they're about to do the critical attack,
Mhm.
Right.
you'll show you'll see it right away. There I think I'm looking for a word. Expressive. They're very expressive.
I
There you
see.
go.
Okay.
Okay.
I see.
Yeah.
And that's what's make it so special. At least
Mm.
in that era, at least.
I guess in Derek's
Because of
case,
the
I
because
guess
of
in Derek's
the
case,
long
the
words.
relatability of the characters for him is what, visually
Okay.
speaking, I guess that's what he's trying to get across. The fact that he sees the characters, he sees how distinct they are from each
Oh
other,
yeah.
and he can relate to who they are and what they are being presented to the player.
Like for example, there's a sprite that
Mm.
let's say Frog. Frog is the character that the knight with the
Yes.
Right.
he flexes his muscles.
Mhm.
Every
You
time you
cannot
win.
do that. You cannot do that if your sprites are are tiny or the chibi type.
Well, that's true.
It's harder to express their character, their attitude.
Mhm.
Just by that,
Yeah.
simple aesthetics, it really helps a lot in
Mhm.
contributing to their attitude.
Okay. All right. There you
Okay.
go. All right. Back to you, Dan.
Yep, no, I get that. I think that's a very good point. Like I say, visually for a game of that era, it was, the sprites themselves were very expressive. They had a lot of actions, and they used those actions very well within the game. So yeah, I can definitely say that. What about you, Sir Joe? Yes, Sir Joe. Sorry. What
Yeah.
do you think? The aspect?
So before I give mine, I'll just toss up a few testimonials from some people that we got from the other Facebook groups. Sir
Okay.
Sir Ben John Jamin says, Chrono Trigger is my absolute favorite video game of all time, and nothing comes close beyond the incredible soundtrack, Toriyama character art, and collaborative combat. What makes this game so special are the different flavors of hope and melancholy presented in each time period, as well as the metaphorical footprints the game allows us to imprint in each era.
Mm.
Tommy Olin says, I have already told this in this group a few times, but I whistled to my four children, ages 5 to 10 now, their unique theme songs from Chrono Trigger official soundtrack.
Mm.
I did it almost every day when they were still growing inside mommy. And I did it the first thing when they were born. They still relax and calm down when I whistle their own theme. So, so all of that pretty much piggyback on what Sir Derek mentioned.
Mhm.
In regarding with the aesthetics and music, right?
Mhm.
As far as the music goes, yeah, I'll give it to Chrono Trigger.
Mhm.
Like Sir Derek mentioned, everybody has their own distinct theme. If I'm going to play Chrono Trigger without I'm gonna mute the game. No
Mhm.
music at all. Will I even enjoy it even without the music? Yeah, I can. Um, is it
Yeah.
a big loss?
Yes,
Not
actually.
not necessary. Well, yes, because because the music at times will also play on the emotion of the severity of the situation here. All right. If a particular scene needs to be somber, the music will be somber. If the music needs something with joy, it should be joyous, right? That's audio video 101. It should always go inside with the mood, right? Um, but if
Yeah.
you're going to play it, if you're going to play it all over again, you can play without the music, sure. But if you're going to play it for the first time, you will have a better appreciation of it. In regarding with the sprites and character design, okay. Out of everyone, god damn it, out of every one of these people, right? Okay. With Chrono, the main lead, you don't even know this guy. Yes, he. The moment you see him, you know it's him in design alone. But there's nothing about his character that you can relate to. Nothing about his character that you can remotely remember what's good about this guy. Isla, she's a semi-naked girl. A lot of times in the graphics, oh, I'll give it to the graphics. I'll give it to the horny, pervy '90s developers. You can actually see her boobs jiggling. I give her that. For 16-bit era, that's very
Yeah,
magnificent.
yeah.
Props to whoever designed that. With Frog, despite being a anthropomorphic frog, he has a lot of expressive facial expressions as well. Um, Robo, well, he's a robot, of course. N- just the odd one out. Marl, she's your typical leading lady. Luca, Luca's just there. Luca's just there to push it. Luca's just is just there to explain the sciencey stuff. That's all there she is. Oh, okay, fine. I'm not going way too deep with the characterization, thing with the character designs. But um, what I'm saying is, as long as if you see all of them, you know it's Chrono Trigger. It's Akira Toriyama's design. Oh, if I'm going to since I'm already in there, Chrono is the only one who has a very spiky hair. Out of everyone that you meet from 60 million BC up to 2300 AD. He is the only one with hair like that. And I'm like, really? I mean, yeah, sure.
That's a good point, actually. That's a really
mean,
good point.
I mean, really. Well, we have to make sure that the one with the spiky, the one with the most spiciest hair, surely he's the main character. No, motherfucker, no. Explain that shit. All right. And how come he's the only one who has a samurai sword, a Japanese katana? Really? I mean,
He's the hero because he's the only one who has access to product. Yeah.
I mean, it was never explained why he has a sword like that. I mean, it's not like they're living in Japan. No, I mean, all of the soldiers, they're all using broadswords.
It was his
Granted,
sword.
sure.
It was his father's sword. It was his inheritance. That's what it is.
Oh, yeah, but where did the father came from?
Well, he came from
Grandfather.
From Japan.
He's got a father.
Oh, I'm sorry. There must be a time gate somewhere in Japan, and somehow, somewhere, his father got to the time gate. Went to this world.
No. So, didn't you hear his backstory? So his backstory was, his mother was Uma Thurman in Kill Bill, and she got.
There you go.
And his father was Bill from Kill Bill. That's how he got the sword.
Actually,
Like
Sir
that
Joe,
sword.
Sir Joe,
We haven't seen Kill Bill 3. It's happening. Kill Bill is happening. The sword will come, and the backstory. You'll see Chrono will be introduced in Kill Bill 3, and it links to the both two franchises.
All right. Derek has the info. Derek has the scoop. All right.
the reason is actually Chrono is your character insert, because in a game everyone likes to be the hero.
Oh.
So
Okay.
you don't need the backstory. You just really want to be the hero. It's
Okay.
basically Chrono, the character it is, they paano sinadya? Paano English na sinadya?
They made they purposely made him. They purposely
they
made him.
intended
They made it like that.
Mhm.
Then sinadya nila na walang without backstory, because it is the player insert. You're basically him. You're basically the.
But
and
my
so
backstory
every-
doesn't include.
and back then, everyone wants to be that hero. So
Oh, okay,
basically,
so with
Chrono is your typical superhero in the game.
That to be
You,
fair,
you, make,
Derek,
you make you really want to make him look like Goku, because
Yeah, but he's got
That's-
red eggs, the
so-
ginger. Really. He wants to be a ginger.
that's the hope for the players. So
You were about to say that.
on the
No, so
first
that
first-
brings us very,
when
that-
you saw
Oh, one
Chrono,
moment.
I want to be like that guy. I want to be
Ah,
good.
I
That's
see.
the reason.
word.
That's the reason.
Okay.
And you don't need a background about him. And
Yeah. Let's hear what Dan has to say first.
no, that brings us very nicely. So we'll go on
Mhm.
to the next couple of bits, and we'll put them together. We'll look at the stories,
Mhm.
the characters, and the character developments. Yeah,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
that. So I'll pick up from where Derek's left off there. You see,
Mhm.
I think a self-insert in a story-driven game when you don't have any choice options of dialogue is
Mhm.
not great design. I think that's it's you can live with it, but if I'm playing a self-insert character, I want dialogue choices that I can choose from, or I want to be able to customize that character with various weapons or various armor or whatever like that.
Mhm.
Because Chrono is a created character that you can't change, like Chaz is in Phantasy Star 4, I expect that character to have a personality, and it hasn't. And that's a fail for me. That's a big fail of Chrono Trigger, and it's something that Viraj's already touched on, that Chrono's a mute. And for me, that's a big failing of the game.
Yeah.
It's not to have a self-insert character. You've got to be able to have control over certain things, and with Chrono, you haven't. I'm afraid. So that's a letdown for me. That's a strike against it.
Okay.
But yeah, so we'll look at those elements then. So Who wants to chip in with those then?
I would say, in my case, let me just chime in here because of the fact that if the fact that Chrono is a tabula rasa, translation being a blank slate, we're talking if Chrono is absolutely zero, like you want to imprint your personality onto him, there's still certain things that you have to factor in terms of storytelling, especially when it comes to video games, because putting in tabula rasa without particular limitations and a way for you to be able to either control the character to bend him to your personality or have follow a personality that the character already has means that you're in that zone where you just have no idea what to do with him anymore. It's like you just don't know whether you're imprinting yourself onto Chrono or you're finding out who Chrono is and later on find out that there's nothing there. You just say, oh, I was supposed to put something of me in there. I didn't know that from the beginning. So in that case, from a storyteller's point of view, I'm a writer also. It's kind of a fail because of the fact that you don't know from the get-go what to do with him as a character. Sure, you can try, but despite what everybody here is saying that Chrono doesn't speak, actually he does. There's certain plot choice. There's certain responses that you can choose. I'm presuming that that's
Yes.
something that you're saying as you as the player and also as the character. But still, it's very sparse. It's very blank slate again, and you either can't put yourself in him because it looks like they're trying to develop him as who he is. But later on, once you get into the middle and end of the game, where you'd find out there's really not much there, you say, oh, okay. It's like, oh, well, all right. Mm-hmm.
I mean, a perfect example of that. So that relates back to what I was saying. Is that if I play a character, say for example in Skyrim, or something where I create a character, I like to use blunt weapons. I grew up playing in the woods, hitting my friends with big sticks and clubbing people. So I like that. So that's a perfect example. When I play as Chrono, I don't want a big samurai sword. That's not my thing, really. So those type of elements, if you're doing a self-insert, should be more customizable. So I agree with that, and I want to get Viraj's view on this because he's already mentioned Chrono being a mute, and he looks like he's suffering.
I mean, I wonder if he's an NPC because he doesn't talk. But I mean,
I would like to add.
Oh well, wait one moment. Yeah, let's. Yeah.
Actually, at the very first part of the game, Chrono has already of personality. You see, he only met Marl on that very first day. See, he only met Marl on that very first day, and he still chooses to save her.
Oh no.
No.
He was directed by Luca to go after her. It was never his decision.
Yes.
Oh, I would debate you on that.
Yes. If Chrono had his choice, he probably never would have. He would have just said,
If I'm going to insert myself as Chrono, I don't know that bitch.
But
Yeah.
he did it anyway.
Yeah.
And if you're asking where he's on the very first part again, there's this morality check. If you still remember the part in the what is that?
Which is not unique to Chrono Trigger. It was actually done first in DOS games. There are DOS games like
There's
Ultima
actually
that had
a
morality checks.
At the very first part, there's a trial. So from there on, from the very first start of the game, they are judging you how your morality is. So if you save the cat, you'll get not guilty plea.
What in the game? What is Chrono's most what choice do you have to make that is the biggest, it's the biggest, most standout moment for Chrono? What choice in what part in the game do you
the thing that defines Chrono?
I
Which
know.
part?
What
You're
choice?
asking
So
which part?
you're imposing yourself on Chrono. So for example, Fantasy Star 3, you can choose between who to marry. You can choose, and this choice of who you marry, okay, you either end up being with the Iraqans on one part of the war, or the Layans on one part of the war. Okay, and that's directly down to you as a player. The game says to you as a player which choice
do you make?
do you want to marry? Okay, what's the most poignant thing for Chrono in the entire game for that?
Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Derek.
Are you telling the
Basically, Dan is asking if there a particular choice that Chrono makes from the very beginning of the game that has
an impact?
yes,
The late
The player has to make, not Chrono.
yes,
You're self-imposing.
that the player has to make. Yeah.
So what is the choice? What is the main choice that the player has to make, being a imposed hero in this? That is a big changing moment. Like I say, Fantasy Star 3, you either join one faction or another faction, and both stories play out. Different.
I think I can't remember very impactful, but at least if you choose not to, there's a specific quest. Not really a specific quest. It's just an NPC. It's just an NPC. Now, if you miss, okay, I'll spoil it.
Go ahead. Yeah, the game is 30 years old. We know what happened. We're good.
In the part where I think in the what's the city in the
Seal. Seal.
What's
Zeal.
that the with magic?
Zeal.
The magical kingdom.
Zeal.
Zeal. In the Zeal.
Zeal.
There's a specific NPC. So there's this seed that is given by one of the three. I don't know which one of them, but it's either Gaspar or
Not sure Gaspar or Balthasar.
One of them gave Chrono. I is asking Chrono if I were to keep this seed. If I were to keep this for planting a seed for planting.
Yeah.
And you can choose whether you burn it or maybe keep it. So if you choose to just burn it, in the future your people will die. Will at least in the
right.
Although it will not happen. Then you will miss the opportunity for the side quest. From that part, if you choose to be what's that?
If you choose to be
to burn that, you will not get this side quest. And you will not get the, I don't know which item is that, but it will be impactful for the late.
Is it a sandstone?
And you will lose all the and completely lose that quest. That it's a side quest though, but it's still very helpful for the character build up and the world building. Development and world building.
Let's hear what Viraj has to say first, and I'll put in my opinion on that one. Go ahead, Viraj.
So what are we talking about now?
About whether
which part of the game that will.
I mean, like, if Chrono makes the player has any choices to make,
I think
that truly does have an impact on whether or not you're going to be.
Just your opinion on the story and the characters, really, mate. I mean, we were picking
I think what makes the story is the characters, not Chrono. Chrono's just he's like obviously the guy you're playing as, but his friends, the journey he goes on. Also, Luca, the dedicated tech geek. That's a good friend of Chrono's, and then he meets. Obviously, you don't know she's the princess at the Millennium Fair, but you find out she's a princess afterwards. And then you meet the frog, and then you meet Robo, and then you meet that cave girl Savage. Yeah, that cave girl Savage. So you meet her, and they all have these. I mean, they're all different from each other, and that's what makes it interesting. But I think that's kind of the story, and they all go on these trials and tribulations because they're all all their destinies are intertwined. And that's what you sort of discover as the game goes on, etc., etc. And that is actually what makes the story. It's these lovely characters and these people that he meets on the way, and you're looking at it from Chrono's point of view. When you go on this adventure, obviously, what I would say, and this is why I sort of draw a blank, shall we say? So you have to get through a lot of the game before you get to the next big event, sort of thing. There's not something that's keeping the plot going. It's only at the start. Once you meet Froggy and you go on, it's like you said, you got bored after Froggy. So you get to meet Robo, and obviously you turn him alive again, and then he does that little dance and all that stuff, and it's all cute and all that. But then as obviously you meet Ayla, and there's a charm when you meet her and all that. But after that, there aren't any interaction between the characters at certain points. But it's like it's not consistent. That's what I'm trying to say.
It's sparse, isn't it? It's very sparse. They'll get introduced. All of them get introduced, and then apart from Frog has a great story and a great evolution.
Yeah, he does.
But the rest of them don't really.
Would have been my choice as the main character instead of.
I mean, obviously, I'm talking about the original SNES version. Obviously, when you play the one with the anime cutscenes with the PlayStation and DS ports, it fleshes them out more, and that does change things. Then,
yeah.
But
everybody says play the SNES version, don't they? All the fans say you've got to play the SNES version.
Well, I would argue. Anyway, continue.
I don't know what he's talking about. But all right. I think it's it has holes in it. It does have holes in it if you play it and don't look at it with nostalgic eyes. It doesn't. It's not fluid. It's not consistent, and I think that's where I have a gripe with it. Yes, the characters are lovely when you first play as them, but then as you play through it again, you like I just have to go back to saying you do get bored and you're wondering when is the next bit going to happen? How far do I have to climb through this to get to that bit? So it's get tiresome.
I'd love to now, so I want to get Sir Joe's input on this now because Sir Joe's a story man. He's a big man. He loves his JRPGs. And his gameplay is secondary, or probably third, fourth down the list for him. Whereas I'm a gameplay man. Let's see what Sir Joe says with his.
Actually, if I can interject first, regarding the initial part of the storytelling aspect of it, I would contend that it is in the beginning, Derek does say that where you can choose to either eat the person's lunch or bring the cat home or try to sell Marl's pendant or things like that. Those are all choices that impact your morality meter, according to some people, according to what Derek is saying. But honestly, none of that shit matters because the Chancellor is going to get you thrown into the dungeon and get you killed anyway, supposedly. So it's like, in the end of it, whatever choices you're supposedly making that does impact your character, in the end comes to naught. It ramrods the entire story, the entire choice system from the beginning into the very end into just one ending anyway, where you're going to be killed. And I'm sorry to have to say this, but that as a storyteller and as a game player, as if somebody who's looking at the plot, that actually leaves a very bad taste in my mouth because all of those choices that I thought would make an impact didn't do squat. So in the end, it's like afterwards, it leaves a certain impression on me. Like, if this is what's going to be happening to me going forward with this game, is this something that I'm willing to slog through 20, 40 hours for and acquire 200 endings for? It's like, I mean, sure, it's there's the illusion of choice, and from a storytelling point, that's terrible. So back to you, Dan.
I have an explanation about that one. To Joel. Okay.
Oh, go ahead, Derek, first. Okay.
I believe their goal for that one, for that part, is just to impart or to let the players know that every decisions you make
comes to jack shit. What?
Every decision or every choices you make, it will impact later.
But it
yes,
didn't.
you,
It
yes.
didn't.
Wait,
Really.
wait,
Okay.
wait. You said that Chrono is with whatever he still get into prison, right?
Yes.
Because the story is not yet done. You
Yes.
still
But
have to play the
understandable. But if
uh,
that's the impression that you get from the
uh,
beginning,
that's the
why would I
problem.
want to?
But at least but at least at least they at least show the players the point their point that every every choices you make that
Uh-huh.
it
You're
will
gonna get killed anyway. Okay,
no
that's
no
what that
no
was it.
it, that's the problem but it is actually explained in the later part.
Mhm,
It's actually and in fact there are a lot
mhm,
there's one that I love.
mhm,
There's this mayor, a very
mhm.
cruel mayor. So he's always talking about his money. He's very rich, and
Okay. Mhm,
um, if you go to the most earlier years
mhm,
or his generation, there's this mother that asking for a jerky,
mhm,
Yeah.
asking for a jerky. If and it happens that you have one. Actually you have to buy one. So
mhm,
she will ask you she will ask you if you want to sell that jerky or
mhm,
instead you want to give it to the
mhm,
then if you choose to sell them it
mhm,
um you will lose that whole side quest that whole side
mhm.
quest and the mayor will still be bad in the present time and you will lose that is that rainbow shell. I believe that's rainbow shell. Now
Mhm,
if you choose to give that without asking for money,
mhm,
that mayor his generation the
mhm,
future generation the mayor will be good will be good.
mhm,
um they will they will give you the one you need the rainbow shell because
mhm.
they find it in the cave. So
Well,
they find the rainbow shell.
let me just
Okay,
say this, Derek.
okay,
It
okay.
what you're saying is that all these decisions later on will make an I mean
Yes, that's
later in the
will
game
make
will it make an impact, but
yes,
it does
yes.
not transmit it in the beginning of the game.
In
In
the
the beginning of
beginning,
the game,
okay,
let's if you in the
that's the
beginning of the
problem.
game, yeah, that
That's
you make
actually the problem.
decisions and you're about to get killed anyway, except for plot device Luca, who later on comes to save you. So
But
it's
at least that's the point.
what
Oh,
point
that's the
that
point.
everything
That's
that
the
you do
point.
It is a big
No, no,
like
that's the
Viraj,
point
like
that it will matter. It will at least matter.
Mhm,
like
The
like,
same
like Viraj has already said.
whenever
There's a
whatever
big gap.
you choose is it will
mhm.
still matter in
Yeah,
the
Dan is saying something.
I think, like Viraj has already said, though, there's a huge gap. The problem
Mhm.
is the pacing of the game that's the issue for me.
That's it.
You
Mhm,
do get it is right. Here's your starting characters. Here's the stories. Here's
mhm,
the decisions you're going to make. And as
mhm,
you run through the game, you
mhm,
do get a lot of payoff at that at the end. You get all the characters resolve, and you
mhm,
get the decision resolved. But that gap between is just is a slog.
Oh, it's a
It's a
slog.
real
Yeah.
slog. It's a real
Yeah,
slog.
it's like there's a lot of colourful aspects at the start of the game. The Millennial Fair, when you get to the castle, when you meet Froggy, and then there's that bit where you meet Froggy, you get to the corridor of time eventually, and all that. And there's a bit there. The thing is, I think it's really good and consistent when you start. The first act of the game is really good, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
mhm,
When you get into it, you're like, okay, so when's the next event going to happen? And you're like trying to get through it, like what's going to happen? You eventually get there. It's a bit of an
mhm,
anticlimax, and then you feel deflated. Oh, is this it? And
yeah.
then like the corridor of time bit, I thought, okay, wonderful. And I thought, okay, great. And we meet Rob. Okay, and okay, wonderful. He does a little dance thing, and then you then get to the next stage. And the reason I'm talking in what may sound fragmented discussion is because the middle and the ending of the ending game I remember, but the middle bit of that game is forgettable because there's nothing keeping you engaged in the story. You're just slogging through it to get to the next page now. First
mhm,
act is something that I'll remember fondly because I thought, okay, this is a cool adventure. Oh, now we're going to get on this. We're going to embark with Froggy. And then, oh, come on, Froggy, where are we going to? And Froggy's a badass character. I like his character. But then you get to the bits, you're like, there's no beats. It's missing part of the story. There has to be more to it than this. Give me more than this. It's. I felt that there's certain aspects of storytelling that is missing, and it's like I said from the beginning of this video when we started this. It's just missing a great chunk of story. I feel like there's nothing that's keeping me engaged to want to continue playing, and that's why I can get very bored easily after the first act with Chrono Trigger. That's why I say it's fun when you play the game first through the first time if you want to see what happens next. But when you get to play it through again, you think, okay, where's the story going to go? Now, obviously, they've added animated cutscenes with the PS1 and the DS game to keep people interested, etc. And I love animated cutscenes. I'll be honest. I love these sort of interactive, sort of full motion video cutscenes. They're like, for example, I used to love the Command and Conquer games because
those are cool. Yeah,
cutscenes were fun with the bad acting or whatever. That's why I continue playing the missions. There has to be a way to incentivize players to continue playing a story with RPGs, and role-playing games are the closest video games of that era where you can sort of think, well, this is a book, isn't it? It's a story you're reading. And if the plot doesn't have a beat and it continues, you've got to wait a long time for a bunch of nothingness before you can get to that next chapter that has something eventful. You find it.
Case in point, for Dan's number one.
That's the point that I resonate with Dan. I agree with Dan's point. And
case in point, in Dan's case number one is Lunar Silver Star story. Silver Star for the Super NES, and that has good pacing, good presentation in between. I guess one thing that I can say is that Chrono Trigger is like a set of vignettes that struggles to try to find an overarching storyline, and it's like trying to stitch together all these small little stories that will tie into large thing. But by the time that you get to the large story, you're pretty much drained already. Anyway, let's hear what Joe has to say from the storytelling standpoint, the JRPG guy himself.
Yeah. Just because Lunar Silver Star wasn't on the Super Nintendo.
Sorry, not on the Super Nintendo.
I'll punish you later for that.
Oh yeah, okay, fine. Get the paddle out. Okay, sorry, not yeah. Sega CD, if I remember correctly.
Sega CD.
Yeah. Sorry about that. My geriatric brain glitched for a moment. Anyway, Joe.
So before I go with that, I'll read another passage from some of the guys. Chrono Trigger was one of my first video games. I used to rent it for the SNES from video game stores like Blockbuster or Hollywood Video more often than most other games. I have since then played through the game in about 10 different languages. I feel like the game is as well loved today as it was back in '95 when it first came out in the US. How about Sir Derek can read the other passage?
Yeah, Derek, if you can read Ezekiel Thompson.
Okay. It was a revolutionary game that was made by industry's best. I agree.
You're about to read out a load of incorrect facts, but carry on.
All right, yeah. Anyway, continue, Derek. Read the passage.
Read it out.
I'll rip into them after.
Don't listen to that.
This isn't an opinion. These are facts. He's gonna what you're about to read.
Okay.
Did not happen historically.
Yes. All right. Anyway, Derek.
No. Hence the name of the Dream Team. From there on, it made mechanics that are still used in today. See, very revolutionary. New Game Plus.
Didn't do it.
This is the only game.
Zelda 2 did New Game Plus first. So
it's not the first.
Did not do New Game Plus first. Zelda 2 did.
I can attest to that.
It says it made mechanics. It didn't make these mechanics. It's used these mechanics.
Yes.
Okay.
It's the first game that used the term. At least it's the first game that used the term New Game Plus.
Well, I can attest to that. Anyway, continue.
It's the first game that what?
Anyway, Chrono Trigger.
See,
Come on, guys.
that's only 2 sentences.
All right, go ahead, Derek.
Not Derek's words. This is somebody else. Come on.
See, I don't have to finish the paragraph, and they're still praising the game.
Fine. Okay, go ahead. Chrono Trigger.
Okay. Chrono Trigger. Okay. Multiple endings.
No, didn't do that first. Didn't do that first.
multiple endings. That's like how many endings in Chrono Trigger?
Well,
how many
no,
No.
It's
He's
15.
arguing that Chrono Trigger began multiple endings. Incorrect.
See,
Anyway,
It's
continue.
15, but
from
it did
continue,
not do
continue.
the ending
which
first.
game that has that tons of ending in that era? In that
No,
multiple endings.
No.
Not do,
Derek,
but-
No,
no.
but
Okay,
you
okay.
see, not yet,
Malicious
not yet,
argument.
Rhea,
Malicious
not yet.
argument. Okay.
Not
Anyway,
yet.
continue.
Dual text and triple text.
It did not do.
Text.
No,
Again,
no.
it did not do.
Anyway, continue.
I'll explain
Derek,
that
Derek.
when we arrive in that when we I will defend that.
Okay, go
So
ahead.
No,
far, I have-
you can't.
and
No,
so
no, no,
far-
I mean-
You can't defend it. You can't defend it. It did
I-
happen.
and
It
so far,
historically did happen.
I have never seen any game like that.
Well, let me
that-
tell you, Phantasy Star 4 was released in Japan in 1993 with dual text and triple text.
Yes,
That's
agreed.
It's
We'll
historical.
talk about that later.
All right. Anyway, continue. Dual text and triple text.
I don't get this.
Okay,
This is what I don't get about Chrono Trigger fans because you're ignoring.
I will be
facts
playing
here,
that
mate.
one soon. I will
You're
be
ignoring
playing that one
facts.
soon.
This is
Okay.
not-
All right.
This is not.
Okay.
This is not. This is what. This
Okay,
is what I
okay.
get all the time. You're not. This
Mhm.
is not. This is people claiming stuff that happened,
But
which did not happen.
unfortunately, it's the one that made it popular. See?
No, it's not. No, it's
And
not.
the- the one that
No, what
made it
the heck?
popular.
You can't.
Wait,
You can't
wait,
turn
wait.
around and say.
Okay.
Hello.
We will talk
You know,
about that
so-
later.
so wait a second. So wait.
This is the fight we were talking about. Okay.
The caveman
my
that invented
favorite
the wheel. The caveman that invented the wheel. Do Toyota turn around and say, "Well, we made the
Okay.
wheel popular"?
Yeah.
we invented
There
it.
you go.
It don't work like that, mate.
All right. Anyway, continue, Derek. Read the
Okay,
passage.
okay.
Read the passage. Go
It
ahead.
is definitely
mate,
my
sorry.
favorite.
Let's go
game
through the
of
passage
all
without
time.
killing anyone. Come on. Let's see.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Anyway.
From that sentence on, it is
Yep.
definitely my favorite game.
That's a
hear that
subjective
right.
claim.
You hear that right?
That's
Favorite
a subjective
game.
claim.
Not only RPG, but it's
Mhm.
his favorite game of all
But
time.
that's his subjective claim. That's not
Oh,
objective fact. Anyway, continue, Derek.
But
Yeah.
I'm just reading.
Yeah, go
And,
ahead.
at least once a year. See,
Mhm.
very
The only-
replayable.
Mhm. Okay.
The storyline is amazing, and considering it is a time travel game, it is quite impressive that the story does not become convoluted. See, that's what I'm pointing
There
out.
isn't enough
The
stories.
story is not convoluting.
It can't be convoluted because there's not much there. From point A to
That's
point
the
B
point.
is really there's no.
Simple is
That-
equals good. Simple is equals good. I hate Final Fantasy 8 because it's very
Complicated.
confusing, very
Convoluted,
complicated.
okay.
So what
For
you're trying
me,
to say
simple
is,
is equal to good.
Wait, I see Final Fantasy VIII is
It
very
really
fun,
works,
okay?
and it really works. And
All right.
I mean, if you've got a brain, you might want Final Fantasy VIII. I think obviously this is a game for small children because you don't really need much thought if you think about it.
And like I said, in my personal impression of Chrono Trigger, it's baby's first JRPG. I'm sorry to have to say this, Derek, but if you're gonna start off with the JRPG, Chrono Trigger would be the best one to start off with because it's simple. Agreed. It's very simple. It's very easy
I don't
to
agree
digest.
with Luis Valdez is telling Chrono Trigger is just complex. Not really. Every part of the game, they are pointing out how to defeat Lavos. That's their only mission, and then it is without a fluff.
Well, I guess in Derek's point, to Derek's point, it's he likes the simplicity of it because it's very straightforward. I guess in Derek's
straightforward.
case, it's very straightforward. It doesn't get into too many.
Ev-
It doesn't get bogged down into too many details from what his point of view
Yes,
is. I
every
mean,
part
that's
of the game, it points out to
So
Lavos. And
I
only
think
that
that's-
is to defeat Lavos, and that's it.
mhm.
I
And
think
that's
it's
it.
great- I think
No
it's
more
great.
fluff.
I think it's great that you recognise that, and that you identify that. But what we also need to appreciate is some people like more complex stories.
Yes.
So when people are talking about a game as the best ever, you've kind of got to appreciate that there's a broad spectrum there. So, but my beef with that is my main beef with this game because it's not revolution. It wasn't as revolutionary as people make out. It did do revolutionary things, like with the time mechanic. So I'm not going to diss it for that.
Mhm.
But we've just read out a claim there that I've read 1,000 times that a lot of people put forward, and the historical fact is Chrono Trigger did not do those things first. There were other games that did those things first. Every single thing that he's read out, then New Game Plus, multiple endings, dual text and triple text. Chrono Trigger copied those from other games. So let's give those other games credit, because that's only fair.
I would say, to be fair, Chrono Trigger might be the first, might be the game that brought it all together in one package.
Yeah,
I can
there
give
you
it
go.
that. Yeah,
There you go.
I can give it that.
That's fair enough, mate. But you
That's
can't turn
fair.
around, you can't turn around and say it invented it. There's a
Exactly.
big
Nobody
difference.
is saying that fantasy.
He just
Star
did.
Wars-
He just did it.
He just said
Oh,
it.
yeah,
He just did.
The thing is,
At least
this is
a few,
something else.
at least
This
a
is something
few.
else to understand.
You're only you're
Making
you're
something
the 5% of the people that
making
and the
something.
rest of the 95% we're saying Chrono Trigger made it the first.
That's the thing. I mean, for him to make a claim like that is very damaging because of the fact that it's historically inaccurate. What he's saying is, yes, it's historically inaccurate because of the fact that I can give Chrono Trigger as the game that brought it all together. Sure, I can give it that. But for him to make a factual claim that Chrono Trigger is the first to do all of these individual things, that's just historically untrue.
He just dismissed Zelda and Phantasy Star as a series in its entirety by saying those things that those series did, Chrono Trigger actually did, and it's damaging. We're a retro channel. We're meant to be telling people facts and preserving the historical facts
Absolutely.
of retro gaming.
Absolutely.
And you've got we can't be telling people actually because I like this game because it's special to me. I'm going to say that it did things that it didn't because I like this game. It's not right. It's not right.
Yes. Remember, we as timeless gamers, we always do our very best to stick to historical accuracy and factual reporting. I mean, sure, we can toss in a lot of enjoyable moments, but the fact is we do not want to mislead our audience or anybody who relies on us for information. But yeah, in Dan's, he wants to stick to the facts. And in Derek's case, he might be expressing it incorrectly that it's the first one, but it is likely the first one that brought it all together. So that's Derek's contention, and maybe the poster's contention as well. But they were expressing it incorrectly. Anyway, I'd like to hear. I'm interested.
Not
I'm
just me,
interested in.
okay. Joe, not just me. That's everyone's.
Can we talk about? Can we move
Or
on?
the 95%. That's the 95% of the people, not just
Okay.
Me.
That's
the
right.
95%.
Derek,
5% of the people.
Derek, stop. Just listen to what you're saying. You're saying 95%. So if 95% of the people say the Earth is flat,
Okay,
you've all got
that
to
doesn't
agree.
make it true. That does not make it true. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
You go, to a
Viraj.
village, you go to a village and they don't know what science
You
is.
need
They'll-
to accept. You need to accept.
Mhm.
That-
There you go.
So, let's talk
I
about
can just see the Steve coming out of Dad's ear right now.
Let's talk about the battle system. Let's move on
Well,
from-
Um,
I
well,
don't
if
know.
anything else, ladies and gentlemen, it gives more color to Sir Dan's face.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
Which is
That's
conversation.
pretty racist.
That's so racist, man.
Oh, you're
I'll give
Dad,
my
what
I'll
we
give my
telling?
piece.
Dad, you're
I'll
talking to
give
me
my
here. We are racist.
I'll give my so with Chrono Trigger,
Okay, go.
I'll give props to Sir to all of these panelists that we have here, raising points in their own accord.
Mhm,
Sir Joel might be an author.
mhm.
I'm a fan fiction writer. A lousy one at that.
Yes. Well,
That's it.
no, come on.
That said,
Okay.
when I at the beginning of the game, so you save Marl, apprehensively. If I'm injecting my character, as I said, I'm a creep. Okay.
I'm a weirdo. What the hell am I doing here? Okay.
I'm a weird dude. My personality is if I'm going to insert my personality to Chrono, I would have. I don't give a shit about Marl. Who cares? But Luca wanted me to go. I could have said no. The game doesn't tell me to say no. I had to oblige because because the game was designed that way. I go right, so I saved Marl. Sure, granted. Eventually, we saved Marl. We met Frog, and at that point, the story was okay. It's just me saving a princess from a dire situation, yeah. And then out of the sudden, I met Luca, transferred to another time gate, and then out of the sudden, we're in an apocalyptic future where Lavos
Mm.
ruled the earth. How the hell did we get here? I was just saving a princess, and now out of the sudden, it's my mission now to save the world from this alien being that I have no that has not got to do with me. So it's like I just played. It's like two games in one. Out of you know what I mean? It's like the transition between saving Marl and then using the plot device of time travel just to introduce you to Lavos, I mean, it's one big of a leap. Not to mention, okay, um, for the record, I love Back to the Future when it first came out during the late '80s and the early '90s, which I kind of always, I kind of always associate Chrono Trigger with anyway. Back to the Future, right? With Chrono Trigger, the way they use time travel here, progressive time travel. It's not like in Back to the Future where you can where they can actually go specific time and space. Rather than in Chrono Trigger, I've already done all of this stuff. Go and then I'll go and then I'll return to the future. Then if I need something we done urgently back in the past, I go back in the past. But the stuff that I already did earlier has already happened. You know what I mean? Case in point. And for Dan's point earlier, there was this one particular motion that Chrono did that would have defined his character. There's this scene where there's this large laser blast, yeah,
Mm.
and me, I'm playing Chrono. It wasn't my decision. He moved straight in front of that laser blast, got disintegrated. It wasn't my choice. He just did it by himself. So what does that tell me? He's stupid, irresponsible, but although selfless, sure, self-sacrifice and all that. But why would you even do that? Our asses are getting butt kicked. Our asses are being wiped all over the floor. You know
I
what's
can
going to
explain.
happen. Why would you even jump into right in front of
I
the
can explain that.
right in front of the laser blast? But
Wait, Derek. Let Joe
but
have his say. Let Joe have his
Later,
say.
after you
but
finish,
the,
Yeah.
please.
but the developers
After.
had to do that just to show that Kronos being a selfless hero that he is. Granted, right? Okay, I can live with that. My answer would be, okay, we have the gift of time travel. Why not let's go back in time? Warn this motherfucker. Ignore. uh, ig- don't go right. Don't go against the laser blast. Just evade it like everybody else did, so you won't die, right?
Mm.
But no, I have a better idea. Let's go back in time, win a few mini games, so we can get the clone. Go to that point in time, switch this clone for Chrono, so that the laser blast will hit this clone instead of Chrono,
Mm.
so that he's alive.
But did you even consider the clone's feelings when you decided that? Anyway.
Clone lives matter, guys. Clone
There
lives
you
matter.
go.
And I'm
Anyway,
like,
continue, Joe.
and I'm like, that is such a runabout method of bringing Chrono back. I mean, you guys have the gift of time travel. For goodness sakes, the, some of the problems here. Granted, the time that their vision of their concept of time travel is not specific.
Mm.
I think they made it that way so that you won't have to ask questions, but it will only ask you a lot more questions anyway.
Mhm.
Because their time travel is not specific. You cannot really say that, okay, uh, if you have the gift of time travel, most of these most of these results that you're dealing with will be remedied if you go back in time and change the way you did. Another case in point with to all of you guys who knows the game Radiant Historia. With Radiant
Yes.
Historia, they played time travel a lot better because they stopped to very important poignant um, periods of the timeline where you can select two life altering decisions. If you're not happy with that, it will tangent to another timeline where the results where things will be different if you choose this one. And if you're not happy with that, you can always go back to that certain point and choose another tangent where things go differently again. Well, what I'm saying is, uh, they could have played with time travel a little bit more in this regard, but they use the concept of time travel here out of convenience, if that makes sense, out of plot convenience. Uh, yeah, uh, that's it really. I mean, in terms of character development, like Sir Dan mentioned, like Sir Raj mentioned, with all of the characters, their character arc only stops during their introduction. Their character arcs, I felt that they never really developed it throughout the game, throughout the plotline. As the course progresses, there's nothing that really adds to their character arc except for Frog.
Yeah.
Because Frog, because half of the story is finding Magus, right? And that is Frog's whole shtick.
Yeah.
Take that away, he has nothing else.
Yeah.
With Marl, the moment that you saved her, that's it.
You don't
With Luca, she's like I said, she's just there to push the sciencey stuff along.
Mm.
With Robo, once you go to the future, he's just there to introduce you to the future. This is how bad things are. With Isla, she's just introduced as as a chieftain of the village, fights with the lizard people. That's it, really. Eventually, you will have your character side quests to further develop their characters. But that being said, it's just hours before the end of the game, and I'm like, why are we developing their characters now? And I was playing streaming Chrono Trigger. I was already pointing at that game before the final fight with Lavos. The guide says, okay, you can do this character because you have the flying epoch now. You can do all of these side quests now to further the character arc. And I'm like, so aren't we supposed to develop their character arc during the whole course of the main plot? Why are we doing their character arcs now? That said, but hey, did it right. So in terms of storytelling point of view, they could have made it a little bit more streamlined, a little bit more linear in terms of storytelling. Let their characters develop and integrated to the main plot as well, not just Frog.
Mm.
And again,
Yeah.
like I mentioned, Frog, because he's the most fleshed out character, he should have been the. I would have accepted if Frog is the main character of the game. He looks like a frog, but at least he has more character than Chrono Sword.
Then Goku light. Okay. Anyway, and that's saying something because Goku is pretty light already. Anyway, all
No,
right.
that's-
Yeah, go ahead.
No,
Yeah,
so
go ahead. Dan.
that's dead on, mate. I think I think that big. Well, we've talked about it before. That big gap in the middle, and I know Viraj is chomping at the bit chomping at the bit to get to dig deeper into that middle.
Mhm.
So let's talk about the gameplay.
All right, sounds good.
And Viraj, you're up first, mate. Let's talk about the gameplay.
For fuck's sake. Let's talk about the battle system, shall we? Because we missed out.
Fuck's sake.
What's sake?
Yes, notes.
Oh yeah, I know.
What are we getting upset about it for? I think that's a large chunk of the game. That is the gameplay.
is.
The battle system,
It is.
Yeah.
Yes.
That is what we're talking about, and
Mhm.
The guts of the game, as you described it the other day. The guts
Yes.
of the game.
that's the
Go
game,
ahead.
and that's what it comes down to. Now, I know there are some people had their testimonials, and they said, "Oh, this is the first and this," and we've gone through this. I don't want to bring that up again because we'll be here all day.
Mhm.
Oh, I'll bring it up.
But we're talking about the fact that you can do combination attacks with other characters and things like that, and
Okay.
all this for being a first for that. I'm thinking, okay, it was probably the first game because I actually played this before I played a lovely, colourful game on the Sega Mega Drive called Phantasy Star 4, which was an older game by a year and a bit, which actually had that battle system put in before, and it actually worked better in that game than Chrono Trigger, in my opinion.
Don't say that. Don't say that.
Oh, sorry, but it did. But going back to Chrono Trigger, I think that's why people have this misconception that it's like it had a lot of firsts, because people, for whatever reason, this game shouted very loud, and people were compelled to play it, and people had their experiences playing this game before some of these other RPGs. I just want to put it out there that came before it. It's only when you play these other RPGs from a retrospective point of view, thinking, hang about, I've played Chrono Trigger. This happened before Chrono Trigger. Okay, this has this too. So I just want to put that there. But you do have a battle system, and you have two, obviously, with the newer version of Chrono Trigger on the DS and some of the updates that they've had prior to it being released. You have the two sort of battle systems as well. You obviously got the it's obviously the turn-based element of it, but now then you have like a timer where you can obviously wait until your character has strength enough to attack again, etc. And that was something that I didn't really. That's the first game I played which had something like that, where okay, you got a set time before your character can attack again, and obviously if these levels are higher,
ETV.
that's yes.
Yeah,
So that,
yeah.
yes, that was really interesting. I actually like that because I say I like that, but it was interesting because it was
was actually did
Final
in
Fantasy.
FF6. It started in FF6. Not really.
It's in all the. It's in Final Fantasy 4 and 5 as well.
So Derek, you
yes.
yourself are the game saying what that person said actually about Chrono Trigger having it first, because you yourself said that if FF6
No,
had it. Anyway,
but-
continue. See, you just
That's
indicted
only
yourself. Okay.
That's only the
I'm
little
not even
part.
talking about Sega,
Yeah.
other Square games.
That's only
Anyway.
I'll prove it to you.
Point, like, it was the first game that I ever played which had this mechanism.
Well, let's
I'll
let
wait
Viraj
wait-
finish.
Wait for
Yeah.
my turn.
Yeah, let's let Viraj finish
Oh,
first.
yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Well,
Everybody has a turn. It's ATB rules, okay? I'll take the rules. Turn-based.
okay, so but this is the point I'm making. This is a very interesting point Derek has made. Well, actually, it happened in Final Fantasy VI and these other Final Fantasy games first. That's just mentioned right now. I think a lot of people it put a lot of things together, and people thought, "Oh, this is the first time I've seen something like this in this RPG." And because it shouted the loudest, I played it the first. Because everyone was like, I said, "Okay, I grew up with Mega Drive. What's a good SNES RPG to play?" And people were saying Final Fantasy 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6, and I'm like, "Oh, I don't want to play Final Fantasy 6 unless I play Final Fantasy 1 and play it chronologically. I don't want to do that. I want to play something new and fresh." And Terranigma and Chrono Trigger are the ones that were thrown right in my face. So that's why I thought, oh, this is really interesting. I've not seen anything like this before. This is a really cool battle system. And it is, to be honest. But, it's a little, it's simplistic in how it works. And after a while, you feel like you're just going through the same motions, to be honest. And you're like, you're just pressing the A button and you're just getting that, and you go, okay, he does this, and that's what it is. But yes, you can do these things, but you can find it tiresome, and you just want to sort of. I think the later renditions of Chrono Trigger and the DS allow you to allow that flexibility if you just get through the game a bit better and more efficiently than the original SNES one. So I would say like the best way to play it if you're going through using that battle system is the DS version, because there are a lot of quality of life improvements of just getting through the game and setting up a macro that allows you to get through things a lot quicker. But that battle system is quite simple. What it is, yes, you can use multiple attacks and things like that, but that's not.
Can I just extend on what you're saying, Viraj? 'Cause
Yeah, go on.
I can hear what you're trying to say. And I
Yeah,
think what you're trying to say basically is that even though the options are there, the game never really forces you to have to use the options.
that's right. You're forced because you want to get through the battle. You're more likely to just use the same old motions. You don't ever go back and think, okay, what are the other options here? So just to get through it, you're just going to do that. Whereas there are other games which actually have a macro system there that that have gone before that, which allow you to sort of, it forces you to make a macro with combination attacks to give you the best attack, and that's other games. Obviously, Chrono Trigger doesn't force you to do it. It allows you to go into your comfort zone and just use your basic attacks rather than falling back and using combination attacks and things like that. And because it feels like it's an effort just to pull off that attack. Yeah. That's what I'm trying to say. So it's not. I'm not saying that you can't do it. It's just not your preferred choice. You just want to get through the battle.
Because the game is piss easy, and that's a big problem with the game because there's very little.
Well, you don't have to use combination attacks because your character's strong enough anyway.
Exactly.
So that's why you're not drawn to do these things. The internet has all these options which are great, and they're great options. It's just you're not drawn to it because of the fact that you can actually beat the enemy that well with just your character attack on its own and your party. You don't feel the need to make these combination attacks. Whereas a game such as Fantasy Star 4 and Mega Drive forces you to do that. You're compelled to find a way to beat a boss or a bad guy because your own attack is not strong enough. It's balanced. And the fighting system in Chrono Trigger loses its balance in the second and third act of this game. It just becomes easier because your character is so strong now, or your characters are so strong now, you don't feel compelled to use all these other options. Which the programmers have brilliantly programmed in. It's like they missed a trick here. They should have made the game a bit more challenging, so you're forced as a player to use these things. So yes, the game is designed to be great, but it doesn't quite fulfill that potential when we're looking at that battle system. That's what I'm trying to say here. Does that make sense?
Totally. I totally agree with that, mate. And
it's not the infrastructure, but it's like they forgot to make the game more challenging towards the end. And maybe they deliberately decided not to because it's on a Nintendo system.
Yeah. And
right,
it's
now,
sorry.
Go ahead. Finish up, Dan, and then I'd like to hear Derek's counterpoint to what Viraj is trying to say. Dan, respond first, and then Derek will respond.
I'll expand on that. A great example is the last time I played it through, you have the slash option, which is an option that if you get a set of enemies in a line, it hits all them through, which is I think that's a fantastic, innovative way of doing the battle. So, I think it's great. I think that's great. The problem is, I counted how many times I had to use that as I played through it. I used it twice throughout the entire game because there were no enemy challenges that forced me to have to use that. You can use it as an option more, but like Viraj says, it's a by the by. You know what I mean? It's once you get to an enemy, you can literally a lot of fights just press the A button and it goes through it. So for me, a lot of Chrono Triggers, that's one of the biggest issues for me. I can't stay invested in the game, especially that middle section, because when there's no story, the gameplay is under the spotlight, and the gameplay for that section is just boring. I think it's flat out boring myself because it's too easy. It's too easy, and the boss fights are very predictable. They're so easy to figure out. The boss fights, you've got patterns, you have to do them, but you just figure them out. And the items that you pick up do a lot of the work. If you pick up an item, you pick up the vest that protects you from fire, stuff like your Tyrannosaurus or whatever it's called fight, you just don't get injured. So to me, when you've come from a Fantasy Star background or a game like that, and you have to think about every fight, Fantasy Star 2 is one of the hardest games I've ever played as an RPG. So when you're as a 10-year-old kid and you're raised watching every item, every decision you make, every fight, and then you get to Chrono Trigger, it just bores. It's just boring gameplay wise.
There's no danger of getting game over.
Wait. Before we get to that, I'd like to hear Derek's counterpoints because he seems to have a lot of things to say.
His
Let's
tongue is
counter
Okay.
what Dan is saying right now. Derek, for your benefit, if you'd like to say stuff in Tagalog, I'll translate for you. Don't worry about it.
Okay,
Go
if
on.
there's anything hard for me to explain, so
Yes,
you'll be the one
absolutely.
to. Okay,
Yes, I got
first I need to rebuttal about the slash.
you.
The slash. When is the first you explained that when you use that because it is
Technique.
the property of that move.
Mm.
It's called the tech. Actually, it's called
Mhm.
tech. It's not spells or it's
Mhm.
technique or tech.
Mhm.
So the property of that move is it's like on a straight line. So
Mhm.
and that's make it perfect. Why? Because
Mhm.
in a chrono trigger battle, it is not static. What I mean about not static, because the enemies move around while in the battle, and
Mhm.
you never seen that before. So it's like you are playing a turn-based game that looks like an action game. It looks like Secret of Mana.
Okay.
Actually,
Mhm.
in the first you see it and you have played Secret of Mana first, you're expecting that it's Secret of Mana, and it
Mhm.
doesn't even have what's that uh, a battle screen. It doesn't even it will the battle it actually begins once you
Mhm.
encounter the enemy, and that is
Mhm.
so that's
Innovative.
very unique in that
Yeah,
time,
yeah.
because
Okay.
all I mean most of the RPG games have battle screen, and the only game that doesn't have is Chrono Trigger. Okay,
No,
okay.
no,
About
not
the
quite,
slash,
not
about the
quite,
slash
not
again.
quite again. Let's talk facts.
Wait,
Oh,
wait.
let's talk facts, Derek. Facts. Source of the
Unfortunately,
Kingdom on
again,
Sega Mega Drive in
um
1992 did the
Dan,
same.
again, I
Mhm.
will repeat it again. Unfortunately, there's only a 5% know about
It don't matter.
that. Unfortunately,
5%
I'm,
are
I'm
right.
sorry. I'm sorry,
5% are
Dan.
correct.
I'm sorry, Dan.
Anyway, we'll let
But
Derek
about
have his
about
turn.
the
We'll
slash,
let Derek. Take note of what Derek is saying, that, and
if
we'll
you're
rebut it
if
as
you're
as we go. Okay, later on. Okay.
if
Go ahead.
you're panong nilalait,
If you're being
you're playing
derogatory, if you're being
about that
derogatory.
slash move.
Mhm.
You if if you if you are that really interested with
Mhm.
the if you're really into if you're really immersed in the game,
Okay.
you will encounter some NPCs
Mhm.
that will tell about that move, that slash
Mhm.
move.
Okay.
Okay, you can
Mhm.
actually use that in the very first, not in the very first, in the second boss of the
Mhm.
game, the slash.
Okay.
The game will tell you the dragon.
Yes.
If you remember the dragon, the robotic
Mhm.
dragon,
Mhm.
the game itself will tell you it is charging. It's charging or it's charging for
Friend
very
attack.
strong attack.
Mhm.
The monster's strongest attack is the Sasagasa.
The
What is
one
it
where
in
it
English?
runs over.
The
It
one that
runs over everybody. Okay.
the one that runs over.
Mhm.
If you read that well,
Mhm.
actually some of the NPCs are are suggesting you that you slash to that you
Mhm.
slash when he's recharging his attack.
Mhm.
So once you use slash, it will cancel. It will cancel. That's the property. That's what
Okay.
make it that's what make it unique. And
Mhm.
again, about the Tito Joel, di ba?
Go ahead. Go
Earlier
ahead.
I said there are some parts that are borrowed from
Mhm.
Final
Yes.
Fantasy
Yeah.
because it works.
Mhm.
It works.
Yes.
Yes, it borrows the active time battle,
Mhm.
but it add more. Okay. If you feel the bar, if you feel that it doesn't how how do you say?
Go ahead. See, speaking
Once
in
you
Tagalog, I'll
once
translate
you
it.
kill the bar, you are not obliged to use the attack, but because Chrono Trigger's battle system have timing.
Mm-hmm.
On the very first part of the game, you will know why. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
there are what's that I mean the first enemies.
Mm-hmm.
If you the tendency of again the tendency of that mechanic.
Mhm.
If you're waiting, see, if you're waiting for the bar to fill, the tendency
Yeah.
of that is the player has to what's your instinct? You
To,
need to use the magic so that hindi mo sasayang.
yeah. So you don't waste it. Okay.
Or
So
you
you don't
don't
waste
waste
it.
the time because it's already full. But in
Yes.
Chrono Trigger, you still have to wait. Why?
Mhm.
There are certain enemies that you really want to wait for to wait to deal more damage.
Mhm.
Since the battles are not static, once
Mhm.
they grow close, use
Mhm.
the cyclone. Now, if
Okay.
you use the cyclone earlier, you will only hit just one enemy.
Okay.
That means yes, it borrowed a mechanic from the Final Fantasy games, but
Okay.
it added more. It added
Mhm.
more depth, and that's not all. There
Mhm.
there are there are enemies in the dungeon. If you guys remember the one with shields,
Yes. Mhm.
you get if you attack that right away, and
Mhm.
if you're accustomed to when you fill your bar, you attack right away. If you're
Yeah.
accustomed to that one, you will only deal like
Minimal damage.
single digit. But
Mhm.
if you wait to open, elevate the opponents to open the shield, and
Mhm.
you attack them, you deal them one hit lethal damage. See,
Mhm. Okay.
it's
Mhm.
all about the timing, and
Mhm.
that's what makes the battle system. Yes, I that's the argument of it
Mhm.
because Chrono Trigger is very simplistic, but it's actually it actually has a depth. It's
Mhm.
actually has a depth.
Derek is arguing basically if you dig deep enough into the mechanics of the game, it is complex. Now,
Okay.
it is. I guess what Derek's argument is, it's as complex as you want it to be. I guess
Ah,
in.
okay. Since Sergio is I think from all the panels here, Sergio is
Mhm.
the one who played the Chrono Trigger the latest. Which part
Mhm.
of the game at least which that you get nahirapan ka? How do you say?
Yes. Which part of the game gave you
Right.
the most trouble?
Right.
Which part? I can actually guess. I can actually guess.
Okay, there
But
you go.
Right.
go. Drop one.
Mhm.
During all of my playthrough, the one opponent that I really had difficulty fighting was Lavos
Mhm.
ending game.
Okay.
But to Sir Derek's point, he's right.
But that's
The
I
safest
will I'll try to sige go.
yeah.
Go ahead.
There are various ways how to play Chrono Trigger in terms of the combat. My method was
Oh,
is a bit
I
more
think there
safer.
you go.
Mine's a bit more safer. Yeah. So my method is a bit more safer in terms of my party.
Mhm.
There should always be a healer.
Mhm.
There should always be a tank, and there should always be the magic user.
Mhm.
To Sir Derek's point, there are enemies that will respond better against magic. There are some opponents that will respond better with blatant
Force.
attacks
Mhm.
and attacks and force, right?
Yes. Mhm.
And of course, you always need someone who can heal. I use Frog most of the time because he's he he's to my opinion he's a all rounder. He can
Mhm.
attack, he can heal, and he can use magic as well.
Mhm.
I will only use Isla for boss battles. Why? Because of her triple kick.
Okay.
Chrono, um, uh, Chrono, sure. Uh, he's a default guy. Uh, in terms of strength, he's only second to I would say Robo in terms of strength.
Mhm.
right? But again, I find myself using Frog most of the time because he's an all rounder, right? He can use magic, attack, as I mentioned, and heal.
Mhm.
In terms of the enemies, I would give it to Sir Derek in Chrono Trigger because it's not about pressing A all the time.
There you go. That's
A few
perfect.
times I need to understand the behavior of the opponents as well. If
Mhm.
I'm strong enough, sure. If I'm level 99 through the help of a magical genie, if I cheat my way, I could just use A all the time. But no.
Mhm.
There
Let
you
me
go.
just say
Eventually,
this, man.
I found a strategy. I found a strategy that worked for me.
Mhm.
Sir Dan saw me how to defeat one particular enemy. I used a strategy that I felt was effective, so I just stuck to that.
Mhm.
But it doesn't necessarily mean the same strategy will work in every single enemy, though.
There you go.
Mhm.
I would give it to Sir Derek on that regard.
No,
Yeah, yeah.
but then again, let me argue something on that. Dan's point is that you don't have to. Dan and Viraj's point is that you don't have to. Of the
No,
100%, 95% of that can just be done pressing A. Because
Not
if you use
really.
Derek's term,
Not really.
you can actually they were. I mean, take it
I'll
from somebody. Derek,
okay,
one
okay,
moment.
okay, okay.
Take it from somebody who just most recently played Chrono Trigger on Android. We're talking about the Android version here. Android version has an auto battle button. We're
yeah,
talking as in if you turn on that auto battle button, you can sit back and watch Chrono and team beat up on all the monsters all throughout most of the game. To use your argument, Derek, 95% of the game, I just had auto
It
battle
will
turned on and
never
was just
happen.
watching it
Actually,
go. That's the thing. In my case, it happened. I'm you can't invalidate my personal
I
experience on this one because of the fact that I actually personally did it through Android. 95% of the battles I went through using auto battle. The only
I will
time I
let
turned it
you.
off was when I went into the boss battles, and I that was when I started having to think about what techniques I had to use. And that was about the only time. And afterwards, I turn on auto battle again, so that I can just continue with it. Honestly, sorry to have to say this, Derek, but I see both sides' points. In Virage's and Dan's case, the A spam portion is blatantly clear to me because even Chrono Trigger completely admits to it by having put that auto battle button in the Android version. They admit to themselves that 95% of their battles are boring. It's just automatic. You can just force your way through them. You don't have to. And the thing about it is, Viraj put it succinctly. There is no compelling point for you to have to think about more complicated techniques. Sure, you can, but there's no compelling reason for you to want to because you can just force your way through. I'm sorry to have to say this, Derek, but yeah. Anyway, you can rebut me. Go ahead, Derek.
yes, yes.
you can mention
There's
the
a
boss
specific.
battles.
Mm.
There's a okay. Can I?
Go
There's
ahead, Derek.
okay. I'll let. Paano bang sasabihin na ipapaalala ko kay
Remind.
Sir Joe?
Remind you.
I will
Mm.
remind Sir Joe. I think if no, most I think most of the players would have a hard time in the
Mhm.
Zeal. I no, the floating palace. Is it called
Okay.
Yeah,
palace?
Zil. Yeah.
There are robots that are colored in that are colored.
Mhm.
There are blue, red, and yellow.
Mhm.
I first. What's the norm?
Mhm.
What's the norm in most of the RPGs? Pick
Don't like what?
the best attack. Pick the best
Mhm.
attack and use
Yeah.
it all throughout the game, and you will get in
Spam it.
Final Fantasy 6. Okay, spam it. Final Fantasy 6. The best weapon is Ultima. The best spell.
Mhm.
You can beat if you just teach all Ultima on
Mhm.
and you will beat the game easily. But that
Okay.
will not happen in Chrono Trigger. Okay.
Mhm.
Um one of the best attacks in Chrono Trigger is Luminaire. That is
Okay.
from it's
Yeah.
almost the same as Ultima, only color yellow.
Mhm.
That's like a yellow version of Ultima. Okay.
Mhm.
In Zeal Palace,
Mhm.
try using Ultima in those robots. The
Okay.
yellow,
Mhm.
the red, the blue.
Mhm.
Their ano yung ugali?
Their attitude, their
Their
stance,
attitude or their response.
Mhm.
Once
Yeah.
they're hit with a different, or let's say example, the
Mhm.
red one, the red robot, once they're
Mhm.
hit with the yellow, which is
Mhm.
the lightning,
Yeah.
it will retaliate. Um, fire two is the fire,
Mhm.
the red one. It will retaliate fire two. It will destroy your it will it will damage all your party.
Yes. Go ahead.
Since since in that battle you have red, blue, and yellow,
Mhm.
so the once you hit the other ones, the blue one, it will also retaliate, but
Mhm.
it will be effective on the yellow.
On the yellow. Okay.
Oh. If you
Mhm.
spam like it will actually delete your party.
Mhm.
Have you tried that one? Have you experienced that one? Sir
Me
Joe,
first. Joe. Go ahead.
or Sir Joe, have you experienced that? Have you tried using Luminary, the best weapon in the or the best spell on that part?
Mhm.
I was advised by the guide not to do it
Oh, there you go.
Oh,
because
see,
no, 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 because
that's
no, because
that's the point.
to serve their exploit, to
See,
serve their exploit,
see, see,
to serve their
see. If
to
you
serve their
don't know
exploit.
what you're doing, if you don't,
Mhm.
the game will punish you. If
No,
you
wait.
don't
Mhm.
know
So
what you're
wait,
doing,
wait. So, so, so
if you keep on spamming, your party will be clear.
Yeah, but
See,
before you get there, before you realize that you
try
hit that
try
point,
with
then
99 life.
you'd have spammed the attack all throughout. Anyway, Dan, I
mate,
think.
my last playthrough,
Mhm.
I didn't even get Luminary. I finished
Oh,
the game without it.
oh.
You know, because
Oh, see, that's the
there
point.
there were no need for it because everything was
Mhm.
just so straightforward.
See, that's the point.
Mm.
What
The game
to
wants
not?
you to.
The game wants you to.
No, I mean I didn't even get the Luminary. I did my characters didn't level to the point where
The
I had
game,
the
Mhm.
Luminary attack
see,
Mhm.
because I
the,
didn't need it, and that's my point. That's my point with the game's challenge and lack of challenge because
Mhm.
it's so straightforward. You know, I hear what you're saying. It's got these elements in that can if you use Luminary on this enemy, it
Mhm.
buffs you back.
Mhm.
I got to that point and finished the game without having Luminary in my arsenal. So
Mhm.
is that's where my complaint is with the gameplay design.
Well, I think in Derek's point. Oh, sorry about that. In Derek's point, it's because of the fact that he went into a deep dive into the game, and he really explored almost every single aspect and facet of it for him to be able to
um,
realize that that's
Tito
that's what
Joel,
happens. Yes, go ahead, Derek.
it happens very earlier in the game.
Hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
If you remember the robot with 2 bits, if you
With
remember the robot with two
what?
bits,
With testicles? What? Oh,
no,
okay.
no, the robot in the future,
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I know
the
what you're
Tentacles,
small
talking about. Yeah.
robots.
Okay. There you go.
If you use them,
tentacles.
Because when
the
you say 2 bits,
pakalahatan,
that's
what is
very
the
different.
pakalahatan?
Okay.
Okay,
Sorry.
if
Sorry.
you use
Yeah, Derek.
PoE attack on those three, what will happen?
You
Mhm.
They
get
will
you
attack
get
with their very best
yeah,
attack with you.
Yes.
That
Then
we
you get
call,
blasted with a
or
laser blast
you
that
will get
damages you every time. Yeah.
you will get killed.
Yes.
So
Mhm.
the game is teaching you not to
Mhm.
just
yeah,
spam
but
your
Derek,
best attack.
these are
Mhm.
very simple. That's what my point is. These are beginners. These are beginners lessons.
Mhm.
When you play like games, I'm talking like Baldur's Gate 2 and Bard's Tale 4.
Mhm.
These are lessons. These are lessons that are all learned in the first 2 hours. That's what
Mhm.
play
Oh,
like.
oh
Oh,
yes.
sorry.
Then you agree that you don't have to spam just then we all agree that we don't have to spam just A2 with the game, right?
Absolutely. We agree that
Oh, see,
we don't have to spam. We
that
don't have to spam it to 100%. We
you
just have
can
to spam it
actually,
for
but you get
95% of the game.
Yeah.
That's it. There.
To use your own argument, Derek, when 95%, that lovely 95% that you keep saying, when 95%
I can
of the
actually
game is press A,
see,
it's not.
Yeah. Exactly. That's it.
What
and
Sir Derek is explaining is the remaining 5%, where
Yes.
you
Exactly.
actually need the
So
strategy.
Derek chose to ignore my
I love
5%,
how they
so I'm
do the
ignoring
bosses.
his.
See, the bosses are like puzzles.
Mm.
There is one
They
I
are.
like. there's one I like, the golems. The golems. The first you encounter like one golem, then that's in the part of the zeal. Okay. Once you use an attack, let's say you use physical, it will retaliate you with the half the big ball. It will attack you with the and it will half your life. And it will deal 50% of your life. Okay. That's now if you attack him with fire, it will attack you with very hard fire damage. No. Same as true with lightning. It will attack you with lightning attacks. Now it's different with water. If you realize that once you use water, their attacks are weaker. See,
So,
if you keep on spamming, it is about figuring out the boss. It's like puzzles.
It's
The boss,
easy.
but about 95% of the other enemies, you just like I said,
No, I can make a document. That is
I
really-
understand that, Derek. I understand that, Derek. But
I will-
you can choose to,
Okay.
use all these
At the very
magical
first, the
techniques and everything.
dragon. If you attack the wheels, it will
Mm.
only heal.
Yes.
So if you keep on spamming, it will only heal the. So your choice is to. You don't have to spam it. Your choice is to you target the head.
Yeah, no, what you're saying there is that it teaches you that there are weak points to enemies, and almost every
see?
RPG actually has that. Now the thing
Exactly.
about it is but then again, for you to claim that these techniques are essential to beating the boss, I'll have to say no, because once I figured out that the head was the first thing to hit, I spammed A on the head first, and then started beating up on everything else.
Oh,
So I didn't need all these special techniques. I just had to spam A. And to somebody in the chat who said, but the entirety of the combat uses A. What other button can you use to progress battle? If that's the argument that you're saying, Luis, is the fact the A is the activation button, but you don't have to use any of the other buttons like left, right, the shoulder buttons or anything, because of the fact
yes,
that
you can.
if you're strong enough,
Okay.
then you can beat any 95% of stuff that comes at you. But yeah,
That
that's what
actually that actually applies in every game.
agree.
It will apply on Pokemon.
Mm.
If you know the weakness, or you even just keep on spamming everything like normal.
Agreed. Yeah. I mean, but the
Actually,
argument is what you're saying is that Viraj's point is that it's something that is there, but there's no compelling reason for you to want to use it. It's the fact that you can just brute force your way through it. And actually, sometimes when you stop and think about it, it's not something. If you just want to try to get through the game to hear what everybody's saying about the fact that it's the most amazing game of all time, you'll lose out on that. You lose out on the many little techniques because of the fact that you're spamming A, which is a plus and a minus, I guess. I mean, I want to hear what Dan has to say about this.
So I'd like to. Well, my point of view on it is that I get where Derek's coming from. Okay, so what you're basically saying in a nutshell is that the game has enemies, or especially boss fights, that requires you to do certain things to beat them. But that's like most RPGs. What I'm saying is that those patterns are really easy and really easy to figure out. I'm not saying that they don't exist. I'm saying that if you go away and play other RPGs, that they test you a lot more. They push you a lot more to figure out certain patterns. There's a boss in Fantasy Star 4 called Lashek, who every single round you fight him, even if you know what he's doing, you will lose multiple party members, and that's if you know what you're doing. When you first get there, wipe you out. Now, Chrono Trigger's big failing for me is that you only have 3 party members, and that limited the programmers to how much they could push back in these battles, because they could not risk, because it's the built game easy to get into. They can't really risk.
They can't risk TPKs, total party kills, all the time.
Exactly. So it limits them, and so with Derek's point there, it's not that Chrono Trigger doesn't have these boss battles and these boss patterns. It's just, to me, it's the difference between a boss pattern in Mario World, which would be
Mhm.
Chrono Trigger level boss pattern for me, and a
Mhm.
boss pattern in Contra Hard Corps, which would
Mhm.
be something like Phantasy Star. There's a big difference in the challenge and thus engagement. So that's kind of
Mhm.
where I'm coming from on that, mate.
All right. Whew. Everybody's got their points across, I think. And I guess, Captain, for going forward, though, that's our discussion on the mechanics. I'd like, actually, Joe has something to present here. Joe, some more testimonials, I think.
More testimonial.
Yes. Okay.
Let's let Sir Derek read all of these. Uninterrupted,
Yeah.
guys.
Which one is yan? Okay, okay, okay.
All right.
All of it.
Uninterrupted. We won't say anything. Go ahead, Derek.
Uninterrupted.
All of it.
From Joshua
And
Anthony.
I'll promise I won't make this time. I won't make
Okay. Go ahead.
okay. I
Commentary.
never
Okay.
got to play back in the day, but binged the Steam version of it while I was recovering from gallbladder surgery and high on opiates.
Opiates.
Okay.
Yeah.
Opiates. I never really
Narcotics.
cared about JRPGs other than Dragon Quest V until I played Chrono, and since then I played a few other classics SNES era JRPGs, but none that have scratched that each Chrono did.
Okay. And Jeremy Baraza, who says, go ahead, Derek.
Okay. Personally, I think it's the best game ever made. Period.
Okay.
Okay. The story, characters, the gameplay, battle system, like FF more fun. The side quest actually give you extra. That's what I'm telling.
No commentary, Derek. Continue.
Later.
Okay,
After
continue.
I read.
Okay, go ahead.
Because sorry.
Wait, Derek. Continue with the comment first.
Later.
Yeah. Extra story.
Okay, back in the reading. The side quest actually give you extra story and the best equipment, and the time travel is actually well done. The twists are some of the best video games, and with more 10 endings to get and new game plus, there's so much to replayability. It is it also has some of the best music in all of gaming. Also Zeal.
Okay. All right. Fine.
Okay.
I'm happy that Jeremy prefaced his comment by saying personally, because of the fact that that's a personal opinion. There you go.
It's always good to get comments from people who obviously haven't played many RPGs.
Yes. I know.
Actually, Sir Tito Joel.
Go ahead, Derek.
I have never played, maybe aside from Pokemon, but I have never played any JRPGs as a kid.
Okay.
It's normal because it requires reading comprehensive.
A big
really
time
like,
investment.
That's the one reading, and also for me, I don't own those Super Nintendo. I don't even own PlayStation when I was a kid. The last console I have was like Genesis. So
that's
GC.
There you go.
It doesn't matter if you've got Genesis. Who have you?
That's very close in my heart. The Sega Genesis. But,
There's a challenge from Barrage on you, Direct. Barrage
I will be playing that one. And
listen, if you like Chrono Trigger, it's great you love Chrono Trigger. But what I say to you right now, I say to any of these guys who have left these comments or anyone who hasn't done it, you want to play a 16-bit RPG and you think you're a big boy, play Phantasy Star 4, and then come back to me. Come back and talk to me once you play Phantasy Star 4, and then we'll talk about how much you love Chrono Trigger still.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, it's a.
It is. But
I took that challenge.
So Joe.
I will be playing. I'll be watching.
Let's see what he has to say, because he took that challenge. He's played it and he's beaten it recently. And have been saying Phantasy Star 4 is like the best 16-bit RPG. Yeah, period.
There you go. All right. Now, well, let's. Yeah, go ahead.
Anyone who this is just a message to anyone who thinks Chrono Trigger is the bee's knees. Some more RPGs, because I promise you, even from that 16-bit era, you might be surprised. You might get embarrassed. Realize, oh my god, I thought Chrono Trigger was the best. There are some other alternatives out there. Don't say Chrono Trigger is a bad RPG. good. It's very good. But you might find something that's more your cup of tea.
All right. I'd like to comment here first on what Christopher Abestado is saying. I hope you understand, Derek. He's a late bloomer. Let him enjoy games he's never played before. And
There you go.
actually, we're not
Chrono
taking that
Trigger
away from Derek.
Chrono Trigger is
Yeah, we're not taking that away from Derek. Actually, his subjective opinion on how good Chrono Trigger is perfectly valid in terms of how he feels about it. And that's we're not taking that away from him. We're just trying to combat information that is inaccurate, especially regarding the fact that people are claiming that Chrono Trigger did this first and did that first. We're trying to battle that. We're trying to make sure that that is corrected and it is. There you go. Siebert Silaga. Sir Siebert says
Siebert, the
Chrono
best
Trigger is the
Siebert
best RPG ever. Anyway,
It's
Jaw
very-
Jaw would like to throw in his 2 cents. Go ahead.
No, I'm just enjoying you guys. Battling it all out. No, to Sir Viraj's point, guys, he's right. Calling something the best if you haven't really tried some others, it's not really a fair assessment, though. You know? We all do that. We tend to hyperbolate. We tend to exaggerate. But keep in mind, there are other JRPGs that were released even before Chrono Trigger did. Okay,
Yes.
just because it's the first time you saw Chrono Trigger did something doesn't necessarily mean they did it first.
You might have experienced it first there, but it's not necessarily factually correct that it was the first that actually did it. So,
let's just be careful on what we say about that. I mean, subjectively, yes, we can, but by spreading it out as facts, we really need to be careful about that. In terms of Sir Viraj and Sir Dan keep mentioning Fantasy Star 4, and us as in the Philippines, guys, we're more Nintendo. We were never really in tune with Sega.
Yes,
Granted, I played Fantasy Star 4, and in terms of story, I give more edge to Fantasy Star 4, despite some observations that I also presented to Sir Viraj and Sir Dan. A lot of times, I every time I play Fantasy Star 4, and even with Chrono Trigger, I always do these rants, post play rants to these guys, to Sir Viraj, Sir Joe, and Sir Dan, about how I play, about the story progression of Chrono Trigger and Fantasy Star 4, and we always have these healthy debates. Why the developers did this? Why the developers did that? Why the game did this? Why the game did that? So, and that's part of the conversation, guys. We can always have these objective and subjective exchanges of opinion, but but what makes the gaming community prosper. We're not necessarily gatekeeping others from liking or disliking anything. We just like to make our points across based on the facts and based on what the games are giving to us, based on what the developers are limited. I always be and I always being reminded with the 16-bit era, they are being limited to the technology of the time. Some compromises have to be made in order to create the story. In order to create the best gameplay, they had to cut corners, and compromises had to be made. Some priorities had to take over the other. Sure, I've made some of those observations to Sir Dan and Sir Viraj, Sir Joel as well during our chat before. And a good thing about that is that I don't dismiss points, and they don't disregard mine. It's always point taken, and so let's do another testimonial.
Oh, okay. There
Gentlemen.
you go. All right, I'll take this one then. David Williams says, I'm a writer with 4 books on Amazon. Chrono Trigger is a massive influence that encouraged me to write. Because of that game, I learned to appreciate multi-plot storytelling and soundtracks. I listen to various covers of the Chrono Trigger soundtrack every time I write. The game is just inspiring. Well, very well said, David Williams. And as for Eves J. Albuquerque, he says, it was after playing Chrono Trigger that I decided my career path. I worked as a game developer for 20 years. My ultimate goal as game developer is to create something that can deliver the same meaningful experience that I had when I played Chrono Trigger in '95. All right, very good testimonials. Be that as it may, everybody has had their own experiences with Chrono Trigger. Everybody's in every the impact of Chrono Trigger to everybody is very different. Some people loved it, some people, found it wanting. But yeah, as we can see here, Alexander Scott, who says, I cannot
like
stress this enough, even now, decades later, no game has managed to emulate the concept of sandbox style open world time travel. Chrono Trigger literally created a world that you could explore in multiple eras and see the long lasting and far reaching consequences of your own actions. You can plant trees in one era, then see the forest they grow into centuries later. You can leave an artifact, gaining power in the distant past, and harvest that power in the future. You can alter the course of human history, and if you did so wisely, you genuinely made the world a better place. But if you acted foolishly, you might return home to discover that humans were wiped out and replaced by reptiles, or that the villain you slew thousands of years earlier paved the way for someone worse. You could create paradoxes only you could solve, possibly by replacing that villain yourself, or you could liberate a whole city in the future by stopping evil in the past. No game in the decades since Chrono Trigger has accomplished this. A few came close, but it cannot be overstated just how incredible that accomplishment is. Sandbox style open world time travel should be an entire genre, even now in 2023, nearly 3 decades after Chrono Trigger's release. The genre is still only accomplished by a single title, and that one is Chrono Trigger. I gotta admit, that's a lot of masturbating to a particular game, but I digress.
no,
Mm,
It's not
all
that big.
right.
Not that big a deal. But fair enough.
We have a few more because we're almost on our 3 hour mark. Let's go with all of them. How about Sir Viraj can read this one?
Mhm.
Chrono Trigger was the game that got me into video games. It was a fourth grade. So I was in fourth. I think I was in fourth grade when a friend started talking to me about it. And at first, I didn't think I wanted to know about it much. He mostly talked about the fighting, and that didn't sound fun. But then he told me about the characters, about Ayla, who he was convinced was part cat, flying on dinosaurs to rescue her family, and Frog trying to avenge his mentor. He even brought in his Game Pro to show me the reviews and character portraits. From there, it was easy to get me to listen about other games as well. He played Parasite Eve, Final Fantasy VII, Wild Arms, and probably dozens of others. But I never let go of Chrono Trigger. And years later, well, after it was off most shelves, my uncle found me a copy for my birthday so I could finally play it. I've fallen in love with many other games over the years. Eco Economy, Journey, Dragon Age, Legend of Mana, Star Ocean, Grizz, thousands of hours, hundreds of stories, wonderful soundtracks, friends literally all across the world. My favorite fan artist is Italian, and one of my favorite Dragon Age friends is Polish. None of that would have been possible if there hadn't been a Chrono Trigger first. Right. Okay. Well, I would argue that the Chrono Trigger wouldn't be possible if there wasn't other games before that. But anyway, you're gone. That person, he's right. This person is right. Thaler's right in saying that this game has inspired a lot of other people. There's a Mega Drive game that was inspired by Chrono Trigger, and you might find it interesting. There's a game that I played when I was modding my Mega Drive Mini, and I put it on there. It's called Pierre Solar and the Great Architects. Yeah. Now, the back blurb of that box, that game is a love letter, and it was inspired. And there's 2 games that fathered that creation, and one was Chrono Trigger, and the other was Phantasy Star 4. And if you play Pierre Solar and the Great Architects, you can see that you can see where the inspiration.
Yeah.
You can see they've got a bit of a cocktail of both, and there are great. I mean, these people are clearly in love with Chrono Trigger because it did something for them, and they haven't seen that X factor that had been put into other RPGs. But I would argue that they need to play games like Pierre Solar to sort of see that. They have to really search for it, but it's there. There are games that do employ these features. I think a lot of it is nostalgia glasses. I think a lot of it is they are in love with that Chrono Trigger story, etc. That being said, it was a great game for its era and its time, and I can't discount that. So nothing wrong with Chrono Trigger. It's just I would still make the point that Sedan has made at the start of this video that it was a first in the sense that it put a lot of things together and made the cocktails work. But there were other games that did these things great just before. It's just CHRONO, for whatever reason, shouted the loudest. I think the reason is it put things together so beautifully well. People just fell in love with it, and people are in love with it now to this very day. And that's what will continue going on, being one of the most remembered and prolific RPGs of all time.
Okay.
Oh,
There you
well,
go.
Thank you for that, Barrage. Oh, we got one more.
Oh,
Got one
what's
more,
the
and I would like for Dan to read this
Yes,
anecdote.
Dan.
And I hope it changes something in him.
It changes something in him.
There
Oh,
you go,
okay.
there you go.
I'm not sure I can really read that very well, mate.
Okay.
Phantasy
Wow.
Star 4 is the best game ever, and
All right, fine. I think I can read it for Dan. Okay. Travis Johnson says, I was playing Chrono Trigger for the first time on an emulator in our CHU in 2011 to 2012. We were on KAF Kandahar Airfield. The 655th TC provided convoy security utilizing MRAPs. These were dangerous missions that lasted long enough for us to get a recovery day, barring an emergency or a mission they deemed critical. I was also going through a divorce, and my living situation and my custody situation were incredibly effed. I was getting caught in mortar showers, not even knowing if I wanted to live through them. But I started playing Chrono Trigger when I had time. I was so captivated by it, I had to make sure I could finish it. The magic of their team was that I felt like I was part of it, and that it truly meant something to me to see their journey through and to have given Chrono back to their team, and especially Marl. It would be over a year that I learned my great friend from my first unit and Iraq tour killed himself alone in a cabin. I would think for hours about what ifs, what if I had a gate to the moment, something as simple as typing Lara or saying, a wavy hand. The gate never appeared, but I lived in our time together in my memories, like I was there. And there is a train station where we waited at to go from Fort Jackson to Fort Bragg. Now that I think about it, there was another good friend of ours who eventually suffered something unfortunate, but in that moment we were there, and the adventure was on hold, in transit, just like in the end of time. Not only was Chrono Trigger such an amazing experience, since I love DBZ and Akira Toriyama, and the time battle system with enemies that relocate during the fight with combinations and techniques, but it gave me the idea to create my own end of time. And yes, it's just something I pretend to be in, but how amazing is it to sit under the streetlight with your team as the music plays? Uh, I I suppose this is a really long-winded way of saying it was a powerful and unexpected source of inspiration that made me want to bring myself home from a war zone safely than I otherwise would have been content to die. That's very powerful, actually. I can't discount subjective experience when it comes to Chrono Trigger or particular games. Heck, some games are so offbeat that if you have personal experience with them, that's your subjective and personal story to tell. And to illustrate, that one was really powerful, if you ask me. So yeah, to you, Dan.
Well, yeah, I mean that's that type of story. If anything gets you through any situations like that, it's a good thing. You know what I mean? So it's hard to pick something apart when they've attached their emotional feelings for that. But I don't think that hasn't changed my mind. That I think Chrono Trigger's an overrated game. Sorry, sorry, boys.
Yes, there you go. And it's everybody has their own experiences and their own story to tell. A lot of people have positive stories to tell about Chrono Trigger. Joshua Hunt says, Dan, you gotta admit that the SNES was an RPG powerhouse, and some of the best RPGs ever came out on the console.
Yes.
Well, I mean, yeah. There's nobody contesting that.
Let's
Nobody's
be honest.
contesting that. Mhm.
I've played through. I'm not being funny, Josh. I've played through more SNES games than you probably have. Over 300. Out of them, 60 were RPGs. 10, I'd probably replay. So, would you call that a power? I mean, it's it's got good RPGs on the system. I think all the systems are as good. So, that I mean, PlayStation 1, I think Mega Drive. There was as many as I enjoyed on your Sega Mega Drive and your Sega CD. PlayStation 2, Xbox 360, PC.
PS1, PS2 was the RPG.
All right, and I'd like to read Jerome San Diego's message here. Guys, can you tell me other RPGs having 10 endings and you need to replay your game for 10 times to know if it's a good or a bad decision? I can say that it's a game that you can have multiple endings for. There's been a few, actually. There's
Star Ocean. Star Ocean Evolution's got 100 endings.
Yes.
Star Ocean Second Story's got 87 endings.
Yes.
Shin Yuba Scramble's got
20K.
85 endings. Princess Maker 2's got 74 endings. Time Traveler's got 71 endings. Blaze Blue Continuum Shift's got 62 endings.
Yeah.
So there's quite a few there.
There is quite a few, and honestly, those who are touting Chrono Trigger as the be all and end all of multiple endings, I'm sorry to have to say, you guys, but you have to broaden your horizons. You gotta have to check out other stuff, and we don't fault you for having a good opinion of Chrono Trigger because it was the game that popped your cherry. Sure, that's perfectly fine with regards to multiple endings, but for you to tout that it's the very best of all time, especially with multiple endings, I'm sorry to have to say that's just factually incorrect. Raj had something to say.
Oh, I was just saying that before the multiple ending, obviously there's this game on Mega Drive called Phantasy Star 3. That has some multiple endings as well.
Yeah.
So my issue is when people say Chrono Trigger was the first to do this. The first. It was the first to probably put all these great concepts that other RPGs had together, maybe. Yeah, I'll give it that, maybe. As I think we mentioned it earlier in the chat. But, you know, there were other great RPGs before, and I think it borrowed a lot of elements. Chrono Trigger itself was probably inspired by a lot of other great RPGs before it, and it put it together. A lot of young people sort of gravitated towards it, and people go on about it. And Chrono Trigger itself was an inspiration for other RPGs, like PS Solar, which I mentioned just moments ago. So we have that. What we've got, Jeff, while PS1 and PS2 was a huge RPG machine, you've got to admit that SNES was also an RPG OG, original gangster. I think if we talk about the Super Nintendo now, because I'll probably be very quick with this, because I want to Chrono Trigger. I think Super Nintendo continued that NES thing where Square did make games with the NES, and they're just going to continue. So Nintendo in itself did have a lot of people who program RPGs for that format, and the Nintendo Super Nintendo format did have a nice sort of orchestrated sound chip. It allowed for more colors, shall we say, than say Mega Drive, which is probably why developers wanted to make RPGs for it. It had a lot of RPGs, so I will say it was probably the first system which had a good library of RPGs. Yeah, and that's one thing I will say about Super Nintendo. So I suppose the original G in the quantity of RPGs. If we're talking about the quality, I think they were still learning to develop RPGs. I still think they were still learning to make games there. And I think they got better as the years went by. From 94, 95 was his best years, I thought. But then if we go towards like PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2, I think that really was the golden era of role-playing games. And that's when people can really say that I enjoyed them. And there wasn't really a bad one, to be honest. There wasn't anything that was bad because they had perfected it. You had a Red Book Audio CD. You had games that had so much more depth and length because of the CD format. They weren't short. They had a lot more variables they could program because they weren't restricted by memory. That's the bottom line I'm trying to say. PS1, it was not restricted by memory. Okay, and going forward, we have memory banks galore. And we could do whatever we want. But Sony PlayStation, the Sony solution, offered some really great RPGs. And by extension, for those of us who don't know, Sega Saturn 2, but that was only in Japan for most of us. So we never got to experience the greatness that Sega Saturn had, because that was an RPG beast. Yeah, I haven't even played all the RPGs on there because I can't, because it's all in Japanese. But I know there's some gold there, and like anything holy in this world, it's in bloody Japan, and we don't have access to it. But going forward, you know, I hope that answers your question, Josh, and my thoughts on that. Yeah, okay, it was the original pioneering sort of system to make RPGs popular for the West. I would say, I would say that. But going forward, going back to Chrono Trigger, my final thoughts, because we're coming up to some time off here. It's a great game. It's a great game. It did a lot of interesting things that inspired RPG developers and people to want to do things in their life. It's great. It's wonderful. But it wasn't as pioneering as people sort of make it out to be, I would say. And that's why I think it's overrated. I think there's obviously holes you can put in this game. But I'll tell you what, you can poke holes in any game if you look hard enough. Chrono Trigger is a great game. It deserves the respect that it got at the time. And even today, it's timeless. For me, it's not a game I'd ever want to replay. It's like a comic for me.
All right. Now, I'd like to hear from the man of the hour, Derek. I'd like to hear your final thoughts.
Okay. Yeah, maybe you're all. But yeah, I'm just saying my thoughts about the game. Because,
Go ahead.
Yeah, because Chrono Trigger is actually my very first RPG. Maybe aside from Pokemon. Yeah, it's my very first RPG that I have played and I beat all throughout.
Mhm.
Also, I have help because I have my viewers to to help me
Yeah, that's perfectly fine.
to
Yeah,
play the
go ahead.
online yeah. And it's like the first yeah, it's the first that I enjoyed, and it made me play more.
Mhm.
That's what make Chrono Trigger, and um it really is really close
Mm.
to me.
Yeah, that's
And
fine.
yeah, oh yeah. How can I say it with the ano ba, yung safe?
Even if you say it in Tagalog, I'll translate it. Go ahead, say it.
Hindi, yung safe nga. Yun nga. If if yung mga if you're if there's really kung meron man sa inyo mga gustong mag-try, or yung mga just like me that have never played RPGs before, I
Mhm.
really suggest Chrono Trigger. Play Chrono Trigger first, since it is the it's a very beginner friendly game. It's a very
Mhm.
beginner friendly
Yeah.
game. So yeah, it's easy. That's
Mhm.
what makes it good,
Mhm.
since it's easier to pick and to play, right?
Mhm.
And the length of the game is perfect. It's short, but it encourages you to explore more throughout the
Mhm.
game with the new game
Okay.
plus. So yeah.
Mhm. All
So
right.
if you're wanted to start playing
Mhm.
RPGs, go for
Mhm.
Chrono Trigger first,
Mhm.
then rather than Fantasy Star.
Okay. There you go.
I agree.
All
I
right.
agree with that. I agree.
Okay.
Look,
No, no, no.
Derek, I agree.
Oh,
Do
there
not
you go.
if you're going to start playing RPGs, don't start with Fantasy Star. So
Mhm.
it's a lot harder to get.
Mhm.
It's a
You can't get
more
deep into
advanced
it.
players
Mhm.
RPG. So I agree with that, mate.
Yeah, there you go. All
Fantasy
right.
Mystic, there you go.
Final
Mhm.
Fantasy Mystic Quest is the baby RPG you should begin with, or play Pokemon like a peon.
Okay.
That's it.
All right. Now let me just toss in my 2 cents worth. I mentioned this before, and I think I ruffled some feathers. And I kind of agree with Derek on this one and Dan. Chrono Trigger is the game, is the RPG to start, because my personal opinion, it's baby's first JRPG. Somebody commented that Pokemon is baby's first JRPG, but now if you want something with a little bit more depth than Pokemon in terms of story, at least, not just catching them all, Chrono Trigger is the game to get. My personal opinions, I listed it all down here. The game is charming. The game is very charming in the very beginning. It catches you visually or orally, from your hearing. The sad thing about it is, I judge a game as being good if no matter when you play it, like before or when it first came out or all the way to today, you can still play it all throughout and not get bored by it. There's certain games that are like that, like Baldur's Gate,
There you go.
Civilization, things like that. I might not be the audience that Chrono Trigger is looking for, because honestly, when I started playing it, I put it down after a week and never, and just kind of lost the track of it in the first time. And currently, when I tried to play through it using the Android version, using the auto battle system, uh, the one thought that kept constantly going through my head was, I could be doing something else right now, or I could be playing something better, or like 5 minutes in or 10 minutes in, my eyes were slamming shut because it's the best cure for insomnia that I just found. I just want to go to sleep after playing 5 or 10 minutes of the game. Um, it's it's the fact that if I have to have played all the endings of a game for you to tell me that it's good, then it's a terrible game. Because for me to go through everything for the game for me to be able to say that it's good, then that means that it just didn't catch me from the very beginning. So I'm sorry to have to say that. So in the end, though, I'm not faulting anybody for finding Chrono Trigger fun or good to play or addictive or anything like that. That's your opinion. That's your subjective opinion. That's perfectly fine. But for me, it's just not the kind of game that I would honestly pick up and play if I was on a deserted island. I mean, if it was the only thing left in the world. So that's my personal opinion on it. It's not the be all and end all of the JRPG genre. Sure, I can credit it for having put together a lot of the things that were big in the time. But for some people out there who say that it's the very best game of all time, I'm not discounting your personal experience with it, but subjectively, that's your opinion. Objectively, it's not. That's my take on it. On to you, Joe.
Um, when I first posted something remotely negative about Chrono Trigger in JRPG Facebook groups, I was crucified multiple times, more than I can count. Sir Dan and Sir Viraj were there to help keep the flies out of buzzing all over my body, my decomposing body out of the stick. And it's like, and Sir Joel was right. Why do I need to play all of the 12 endings? And I saw all 12 endings. Maybe one or two would have been worth it, really. But it all served Frog, which
Mhm.
begs the question: why isn't Frog the main character to begin with? One ending there, especially with the DS and the PlayStation One endings, you uh you you get to see Marl and Chrono getting married. Yeah,
Mm.
how the hell that happened? Not throughout the game that they were interacting with each other intimately. That would suggest that they're an item. With Marley, sure, she's thirsty for Chrono, but I mean, but because Chrono is such a blank slate, he's not really talking all the time. You don't even know whether he likes the advances or not, her advances or not. For all we know, he likes Frog. For all
Yeah.
we know, he likes Robo. For all we know, he likes Isla Moore. God damn it, right? I mean, what I'm saying is, uh, there are certain some story plot points in there that maybe I was trying to find. I'm creating my own head canon. I'm trying to write my own story that I would have like Chrono Trigger did this, did that. But but all I have to do is just soak it in and drink the Kool-Aid. I have to. In preparation with the show, I had to take the challenge that I should play Chrono Trigger, like sit through it out from beginning to end. And I played Chrono Trigger just once, and I used a guide to get myself the best ending with just one playthrough, and I did. Okay, and I talked to Sir Biraj, I spoke with Sir Dan, I spoke with Sir Joel about it. Okay, we'll do the Chrono Trigger episode. I said, okay, it's all said and done. But it's been suggested that I should have something to compare it with. Granted, it's my first. Believe it or not, guys, it was my first JRPG that I finished for the Super Nintendo. I got introduced with the genre on the PlayStation One. Sir Dan pointed out that I'm a story guy. I never realized that up until now. With the PS1 games, there were a lot of JRPGs as well, but I always find myself questioning the story as well. Coming to and so I don't want to hear people saying that you shouldn't judge Chrono Trigger up to date standards. I can separate today's gameplay, graphics, whatever, in store as long as the story is there.
Mm.
It could be an 8-bit game as long as the story is solid. I can appreciate that. I can appreciate the low key silence. I can appreciate the comic book style of Fantasy Star 4. I can appreciate the FMBs that some of the PS1 games are showing. Sure, that's fine. It's part of their storytelling. Sure, it's part of the visual, the graphical storytelling. I can appreciate all of those styles. As the players, we just have to make sure that we're piecing all of the information piece by piece and not relying the game to spoon feed us everything. Like Sir Dan mentioned that to me as well.
Mhm.
I'm always being reminded that the game doesn't have to spoon feed you everything. With enough visuals, with enough music, you can come up with, you can interpret what's going on with the game, what's going on with the story. I learned that the hard way throughout the years playing PlayStation 1 JRPGs, PS2, PS3, coming down to SNES. I played Fantasy Star 4 after I played Chrono Trigger. I realized that in terms of that both games cannot necessarily be compared to one another because they play differently. But in terms of storytelling, character development, interactions, I said to these guys, I will give the edge to Fantasy Star 4.
Mhm.
And you will not have that kind of conclusion, guys, if you haven't played the other game. If like we're saying, if Chrono Trigger is your benchmark towards everything, nothing else will compare. We just need to have we just need to have an open mind on giving other games a chance and see for ourselves which one is gold and which one is not. Back to Sir Dan.
Mhm.
Thank you very much for your thoughts, gentlemen. Well, I've enjoyed the episode. I think it's been very fun. I mean, like I say, I still think Chrono Trigger is a good game, and I've really enjoyed the debates, both from the chats and from Sir Derek. Thank you very much, Sir Derek, for all your counterpoints, mate. It's been good, mate. It's been good, mate. The banter's been brilliant. I've enjoyed it. My final thoughts on the actual game itself. It has really come through this episode, and that it's clear that it's an evolutionary game rather than a revolutionary game, and it's where you've experienced that evolution to how much you're attached to it. Like some of you chaps said earlier, imagine your first kiss with your first girlfriend. Now,
Mhm.
that it's got that kind of hold on a lot of people. What we need to make sure is that hold doesn't actually block out certain realities, and that's always been my bugbear with Chrono Trigger. That people warp facts to make it something it's not,
Mhm.
and it's recognizing the flaws in it. It's recognizing that for it to be a best game ever, it needs, I mean, there is no best game ever. It's all subjective. I mean, we've all got our own opinions, but when people are turning around and saying 95% of people haven't heard of games that have done that before, or a lot of people think, or some people think are better, that doesn't mean those games don't exist.
Mhm.
And it is, for me, that's quite a dangerous thing, not just with Chrono Trigger, but with retro gaming, that fan bases warp facts to project to change history, essentially. You know what I mean? We get a revisionist history. So that's just something to bear in mind. Chrono Trigger itself is an evolutionary beginner's RPG, in my opinion. And if you're new to RPGs, it's a great start. But please, Chrono Trigger, and I include Final Fantasy in this as well. I read a lot of stuff from people that really only play Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy, and that is like 90% of their RPG library. Please go play other RPGs, because there's so many out there that offer so many better experiences in different ways. I'm not necessarily saying it's a definite better game, but let me just reel off a few games: Baldur's Gate 2, Phantasy Star 4, Luna 2, Bard's Tale series, Persona 5 Royal, Final Fantasy 10, Final Fantasy 7, all these loads, Yakuza Like a Dragon. There's all these RPGs out there that don't get exposure because so many people are constantly talking and drowning out these games with
Valkyria Chronicles. I would throw that one out.
Valkyria Chronicles, yeah. Skies of Arcadia. All these wicked RPGs that get 10% of the limelight because people are obsessing over this one game, this one first kiss game they fell in love with. And that's nice. That's great. But
That's good bit.
Yeah, I'm just a rotten old man who my first love's fat and she's got kids now, and she were nice. She were nice at the time, but I don't really fancy her anymore. I like my missus, and if I'm going to fantasize over somebody, it's going to be somebody like Belladonna or someone with big boobs. Not and that's how I feel about Chrono Trigger. For me, Chrono Trigger is just it's good. Enjoy it by all means, but please recognize the plethora, the absolute wealth of other amazing RPGs out there, and don't let one game just be your sole focus.
Yes. Also, I'll get your facts straight, okay? Don't push your love of a game to, like Dan says, to warp the facts of the case, because the fact is there are objective facts, like there's certain games came first, certain games that did things first, and just make sure to understand that if you make a claim, make that claim with a factual basis, and if you think that it's the very best, it's a subjective opinion. There you go.
All right, so let's do our shameless plugs.
Yeah.
Let's start with Sir Viraj. Where can they find you?
Well, you can find us in hell. No, you can find us on the Sega Mega Masters channel on YouTube, where we, for those of you who love the Sega Mega Drive or interested in Sega Mega Drive games, and the Master System and all the Sega Retro stuff, we talk about that era of the the fourth generation and all that. And we do reviews and it's all good stuff. You can also find us on the Sega Genesis group on Facebook. Boom, back to you.
All right, thank you for that, Sir Viraj. How about you, Sir Joel? Where can they find you?
All right. Well, you can find me mostly streaming on Kick and on Twitch under the banner Banyagang Native. Just type in Banyagang Native in the search bar, and you'll find me streaming occasionally. Life comes at you fast though, so I might not be there on often, but you will still be able to interact with me on the Pinoy Retro Gaming Facebook page. I do my very best to come over there and say hi in the Pinoy Retro Gaming official Facebook page and Pinoy Retro Gaming community page. So check me out there. Hashtag FUFB.
FUFB.
Yes.
And one of our special guests for this evening, Sir Derek. Where can they find
Derek.
Derek.
you? Say hello to your fans as well.
Yeah.
Hello, guys.
There you go. Hello, RGT crew.
You can watch me daily. I stream daily. Afternoons, every afternoon, I stream RPGs in my personal page. I also stream. I also stream on the Pinoy Retro Gaming page, and I used to play just a bit of the 2 hours, just 2 hour content of some of the classic RPG games. Like I actually joined Bahamut Lagoon on
Bahamut Lagoon. Nice.
Nice.
Try that one.
Nice. Good choice.
If you want to watch some of the RPGs that are less known or less popular, you can check it out. Maybe I could play. I could maybe try Fantasy 4 if I.
Fantasy Star 4.
Fantasy Star.
Yeah.
And that's a game you play with the guy, but I noticed you're playing. I came on in the stream once here. He's playing Mega Man Zero. I saw him finish. I rooted for him. I was like, Mega Man Zero. This man's a legend, man. He's playing some other games.
There you go.
Beat the whole quadrilogy. Beat the Mega Man 0, 1, 2, 3.
There you go.
So he doesn't just stick to RPGs, and he's very fun to watch and play. It's really good stuff. But yeah, Fantasy Star 4, give it a go. Make it your next priority on Sega Mega Drive.
All right.
Thanks for inviting me again.
Absolutely, Derek. It's always a pleasure.
This will not be the last.
Sure. This will not be the last.
This will not be the last.
Maybe a Fantasy Star 4. Maybe.
Why not?
Oh,
I mean,
and do a Star 4 retrospective.
Oh, there you go. And Derek, considering the fact that you're trying all these different RPGs, we'd like your opinion on them as well. Okay. All right. And Dan.
Sir Dan, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can obviously find me. I'm the head moderator of the Chrono Trigger fan club. And obviously, you can come in there. No, I'm obviously come and see us at the Sega Mega Masters, which Viraj does with myself. And if you want to join in the group chat, join us at the Sega Genesis Facebook group, where we will introduce you to some alternative RPGs that you might like as much.
Ooh, there you go. Excellent. And Joe, take it home.
All right. Before we finally end the show, Sir Derek, could you promote the Geek Puck event at the Ayala Mall?
Tomorrow will be our day 2 or the last day for our Geek Pops Super Turbo Video Game Festival. It's happening in Ayala Mall Circuit, Makati. We are having a Marvel versus Capcom. Marvel versus Capcom. You need to emphasize that one. We're playing. We're having a tournament. You can still habol. What is habol? You can still catch up with the registrations. It's just message Boss Bell or Belgian or the Pinoy Retro Gaming page, and it's around 450 pesos. Around 450 pesos. But the event is actually free if you don't want to join our tournament. Yeah. Catch us tomorrow. I will be there tomorrow after. So I need.
Derek will be signing autographs and taking selfies with his many fans.
I will
Okay.
be giving you. I have like stickers. I will be.
Nice. There you go.
No, I'll be giving like. Okay.
Yes. All right.
So that would be Marvel versus Capcom tournament, powered by MSI
tomorrow.
Computers.
See you guys tomorrow.
Powered by MSI Computers. No, let's not forget.
Shout out to MSI.
Shout out for MSI. Thank you for MSI for being the partners of Pinoy Retro Gaming in hosting our Marvel versus Capcom tournament for tomorrow. Ayala Malls. What's the time? It will start, Sir Derek, from 10 to 8. 10 to 7.
9 a.m. is the call time for the for the players, but you can go there mall hours.
Ayala Malls Makati, yeah. All right, thank you for that.
Ayala Malls Circuit Makati.
Circuit Makati.
Kita Kits.
All right.
What is Kita Kits in English?
Let's all see you there. You know,
see you guys there. And
all right.
Speaking of the guys. Thank you all so much for staying this long, in part specifically to all of the OnlyFans of Derek for keeping for staying with the program, and we all hope that despite of our opinions here and your opinions as well, we're all taken into consideration. Again, this is not an inquisition about Chrono Trigger. We're just having a friendly discussion.
Yes.
All right. Let's all go. Let's all end the show peacefully and civil. So just to promote the show as well, the next episode that we're going to do will all about. Let me just get this out of the way. It's all about the Sega Saturn, guys. Still Sega.
Yeah.
So we're going to.
I suggest Jansen. Sergio.
Jansen, yes.
Jansen. That's the best.
We're going to devote a whole episode about the Sega Saturn.
Speaking of Sega Saturn,
will be
by the way,
Sega Saturn, which will be led by Sir Viraj.
Sergio, we have our free play on our booth in Ayala. You can play House of the Dead on the original with the light gun. See?
Nice.
For those who have not experienced the light gun, you should try it. It is the best ever. You should try it.
So
Sega Saturn.
For the Sega Saturn. So we're not sure when exactly we're going to do that episode. We're still trying. We're still confirming the scheduling of all of our panelists. That is usually the case nowadays, guys. Unfortunately, we apologize for that. But once we confirm with all of our schedules, we will proceed with the Sega Saturn, and Sir Viraj will be leading that one. So to all of you guys down there, on behalf of Sir JDM, on behalf of Miss
Miss.
Eileen today, who cannot be here unfortunately, that's the show. And hopefully we all see you again next time. Hopefully Sir Derek will be here as well. And so let's all jump on him on his Fantasy Star 4 playthrough, yeah? And that's the show. And as always, our games and our bodies will grow out of date, but our gaming experiences will forever remain. Hey,
Timeless. All right. See you guys again soon. Enjoy.
Ciao.
Sounds good.